Chapter 2920. Starry Sky Tower. The tower was very tall, at least several thousand feet tall. The surface of the tower emitted a crystal-clear light, revealing an ancient and mysterious aura. Ghost Plume was quite good at reading people's expressions. When he saw Zhuowen staring at the tower in the distance after entering the camp, he quickly introduced it to Zhuowen. "Master, this tower is called the Starry Sky Tower. It's the core building of the Starry Sky Camp and also the symbol of the Starry Sky Camp." Zhuowen couldn't help but look at Ghost Plume and asked doubtfully, "I don't think this tower is located in the Eastern Starry Sky Camp?" "It's like this. This tower is located in the center of the four camps and not in the Eastern Starry Sky Camp," Ghost Plume replied. "Then what is the main purpose of this Starry Sky Tower?" Zhuowen asked. "Its main purpose is to record the achievements of cultivators in the Starry Sky battlefield. For example, the more foreign races a cultivator kills in the Starry Sky battlefield and the stronger they are, the more points they will receive. Moreover, the higher the points, the more valuable the treasures you can exchange for in the Starry Sky Tower. It's said that as long as you have enough points, you can even exchange for heaven-piercing godly medicines and divine artifacts. Heaven-piercing godly medicines and divine artifacts can be exchanged." Zhuowen's pupils shrank as he asked excitedly, "I heard this rumor from somewhere else, so I'm not too sure. The points required to exchange for heaven-piercing godly medicines are simply too high. It seems that no one has ever been qualified to exchange for heaven-piercing godly medicines and divine artifacts of that level," Ghost Plume said with uncertainty. Zhuowen was very excited. He knew that this rumor wasn't baseless. In other words, within the Starry Sky Tower's exchange system, there must be heaven-piercing godly medicines of that level. "Let's go. Let's go take a look at the Starry Sky Tower." Zhuowen waved his hand and led Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia towards the Starry Sky Tower in the distance. Along the way, Zhuowen noticed that there weren't many cultivators in the Starry Sky Camp. In fact, it was a little sparse. Even if they met a small group of cultivators along the way, most of them were talking about the Dark Ancient City. From the discussions he heard along the way, Zhuowen found out that most of the cultivators in the Universal Camp had gone to the Dark Ancient City. More than a month ago, Senki Yin announced that Gonggong's death was in the Dark Ancient City. Therefore, it attracted the majority of cultivators to explore the Dark Ancient City. This was also the main reason why there were so few people in the camp. When he arrived in front of the Starry Sky Tower, Zhuowen discovered how majestic and tall the Starry Sky Tower was. Moreover, the aura emitted from the surface of the Starry Sky Tower made his heart throb. He felt that this energy was very mysterious. There were clearly more cultivators around the Starry Sky Tower. At the bottom of the Starry Sky Tower, there was a door that led to the inside of the Starry Sky Tower. Many cultivators were coming in and out of that door. Apart from that, what attracted Zhuowen's attention the most was the Starry Sky Plaza in front of the Starry Sky Tower. There was a huge stone tablet on the plaza. The surface of the stone tablet was crystal clear and sparkled with starlight. It looked as if it was formed purely by starlight. It was very strange. At the top of the stone tablet was a huge standard seal script engraved with the words, "Starry Sky Contribution Ranking." On the surface of the Starry Sky Contribution Ranking, there were names recorded. These names were arranged in order from top to bottom. The most conspicuous names on the Starry Sky Contribution Ranking were naturally the top 3 names. Not only were the fonts much larger than the others, but the fonts of the top 3 names also emitted bright starlight, like the brightest stars in the night sky. The top 3 names were Zhongli Hao Yen, Yi Qidong, and Yi Hanfei. Among these 3 names, Zhuowen was very familiar with Yi Qidong, who was ranked 2nd. He was the number 1 monster in the host region. Zhuowen had met him a few times at the Blue Moon Lake, the cave abode of the 10 Extremities in Corpse Sex Ghost Plume. Zhuowen had learned about the Starry Sky Contribution Ranking from Ghost Plume. It was ranked according to the contribution of the younger generation that participated in the Starry Sky battlefield. The contribution was directly reflected in the number of points a cultivator had. The more points they had, the higher their ranking. The number 1 on the Starry Sky Contribution Ranking, Zhongli Hao Yen, had a string of numbers behind her name. This string of numbers was the number of points Zhongli Hao Yen had obtained in the Starry Sky battlefield. Zhongli Hao Yen had obtained a total of 253,900 points. She was almost 100,000 points higher than the second-place Yi Qidong, who only had 150,000 points. The third-place Yi Hanfei had around 120,000 points. The difference between him and Yi Qidong wasn't that big. Outside of the top 3, the top 10 cultivators had around 50,000 to 100,000 points. As for those ranked between 10th and 20th, they would have around 50,000 to 30,000 points, and so on. This universal contribution list only had 99 people, and the last person would have around 5,000 points. On the Starry Sky contribution ranking, Yuan saw a few familiar names. The 5 great monsters of the host region were basically all on the Starry Sky contribution ranking. Among them, Ghost Plume's ranking wasn't bad. He was in the 30s and had around 23,000 points. Ghost Plume, you said before that if you have enough points in the Starry Sky battlefield, you can really exchange for a heaven-class elixir? How many points do you need? Zhuan turned to Ghost Plume and asked. Ghost Plume's eyes flickered. There is indeed such a saying. I heard that if you want to exchange for a heaven-class elixir or artifact, you have to have more than 1,000,000 points. Zhongli Hao Yen, the first place on the Starry Sky contribution ranking, only has around 250,000 points. If you need more than 1,000,000 points to exchange for a heaven-class elixir, doesn't that mean that no one has ever successfully exchanged for a heaven-class elixir? Yuan was speechless. He felt that Ghost Plume's conditions were too harsh. Although he didn't know how difficult it was to obtain 1,000,000 points, if even the number 1 genius on the Starry Sky contribution ranking couldn't reach 1,000,000 points, it was obvious how difficult it was. Ghost Plume smiled bitterly. That's why it's just a rumor. Since the establishment of the Starry Sky contribution ranking, no one has met the requirements to exchange for a heaven-class elixir. Then how do you get these points? Yuan asked. There are many ways to get points. The most direct and effective way is to kill foreign races. The more foreign races you kill, the more points you get. Also, if you kill foreign races above your level, the points you get will be doubled. The higher your level, the higher the multiplier, Ghost Plume answered. Yuan was a little surprised. He didn't expect the Starry Sky contribution ranking to have such a rule. In other words, the stronger a cultivator was, the more points he could get. Chapter 29-21. Universal Contribution Points List. Master, if you want to accumulate points, you must first obtain a universal token. This universal token is a jade token that records your personal information. At the same time, it is also used to record the points you have accumulated during the battles with the foreign races. Ghost Plume saw that Yuan was interested and couldn't help but remind him. Okay, then let's get a universal token first. Yuan nodded and followed Ghost Plume into the contribution hall on the first floor of the Universal Tower. It had to be said that the interior of the Universal Tower was very spacious. Moreover, there were more than 10 counters in the hall. At each of these counters, there were small signboards for universal tokens. Although the number of cultivators in the Universal Camp had decreased sharply because of the Dark Ancient City, there were still many cultivators in the Universal Tower. Basically, they were all queuing up to get their universal tokens. It seems like the temptation of Gonggong's place of death is very big. So many cultivators who haven't trained in the Star Wars battlefield are here. Yin Wuxia looked at the long lines and couldn't help but feel a little emotional. Generally, cultivators who have trained in the Star Wars battlefield would have their own universal tokens. Naturally, they didn't need to queue up at these counters to get their universal tokens. Yuan casually queued at the back of a line. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia had already gotten their universal tokens. Therefore, under Yuan's instructions, they waited at the side of the hall. After about 2 hours, it was finally Yuan's turn. In front of the counter was a young and beautiful female cultivator. However, this female cultivator looked very impatient and her tone was a little impatient. What's your name? What sector you from? The female cultivator repeated the same question mechanically. She didn't even raise her head. My name is Ma Yujie. I'm a rogue cultivator. The moment Yuan said this name, The line next door also said the same name. In an instant, Zhuowen's face froze and he looked at the line next door. As for the owner of the neighboring team, his voice also froze as he looked toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen saw a fat man, and the fat man also saw Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with confusion at first, but he quickly understood something. His eyes were spitting fire and he was very angry. The female cultivator at the counter also sensed that something was amiss. She raised her head and looked at Zhuowen, then at the fatty in the next line. "What's wrong with you guys? He actually has the same name and is also a loose cultivator?" "Oh, I'm so sorry. I gave the wrong name. I was too excited just now. It's my first time receiving the universal token, so I said the wrong thing." Zhuowen chuckled and continued, "My name is Longwen, an itinerant cultivator." The female cultivator at the counter didn't suspect anything. She glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and quickly engraved the two words Longwen on the surface of the universal token. She casually threw it to Zhuowen and said, 100 high-grade Heaven Path crystals. After Zhuowen paid the 100 high-grade Heaven Path crystals, he took the universal token and left the line. Zhuowen called out to Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia, who were waiting by the side, and hurriedly walked out of the universal tower. He cursed in his heart. To think that he would bump into this fatty Ma Yujie inside the Starry Sky Tower. His luck was really bad. However, as soon as Zhuowen left the Starry Sky Tower, he was stopped by a fat figure. Looking at the aggressive fatty in front of him, Nguyen seemed to have just noticed him. He laughed and said, "Oh, so it's Brother Ma. What a coincidence. I actually met Brother Ma here. This is fate." "Fate your ass?" Ma Yujie spat. His eyes were full of hatred as he roared, "You really tricked me. Last time, you deliberately gave me the fake realm-eluding underworld soul flower so that I could be your scapegoat, right? You're so cruel." Ma Yujie's voice was getting louder and louder. His anger was very strong. Many cultivators in the hall were attracted by Ma Yujie's voice and looked over with hostility. Zhuowen hurriedly pulled Ma Yujie away from the Starry Sky Tower. He brought Ma Yujie to a secluded corner and said in a deep voice, "Brother Ma, there are some forces from the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect in this Starry Sky battlefield. It's best if you don't speak carelessly." "Bullshit your mother. Do you think Master Fatty is a retard? You have the nerve to talk to me. After tricking me so badly, you want to let it go so easily? Let me tell you, no way." Ma Yujie snorted and glared at him. "Brother Ma, you've really wronged me. It should be said that we were all tricked by the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect. This has nothing to do with me," Zhuowen said seriously. Ma Yujie snorted. Seeing that Zhuowen was serious, he became much quieter. "What do you mean?" Ma Yujie said coldly. "I did get the realm-eluding underworld soul flower from the underworld hell. I think the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect put it there in advance to fake the realm-eluding underworld soul flower. Then, they probably did it to trick the cultivator who obtained the realm-eluding underworld soul flower. Brother Ma, think about it. I've already given you the destiny-level godly herb and even risked my life back then. Who can guarantee my life and death? Why would I do something to the underworld soul flower? There's no need for that at all." At this point, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a look of pity, as if he had suffered a great grievance. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia stood behind him. They secretly thought that Zhuowen was thick-skinned and shameless enough. They praised him countless times in their hearts for his ability to distort the truth. Ha! Ma Yujie saw Zhuowen's true feelings and couldn't help but be stunned. He began to believe what Zhuowen said. "Are you serious?" Ma Yujie asked uncertainly. "Of course I'm serious. When have I ever lied to you?" Zhuowen sighed. Ma Yujie couldn't help but show a look of disdain. This wasn't the first time Zhuowen talked nonsense to him. "I'll believe you for now. However, last time, I was almost beaten to death by the 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect Master Senki Yin and Great Elder Gao Yanghong. I suffered heavy losses. No matter what, you have to compensate me for the physical damage, right?" Ma Yujie spread his hands at Zhuowen, planning to ask for compensation. Zhuowen wasn't easy to deal with. Naturally, he wouldn't let Ma Yujie get away with his carelessness. The two of them went back and forth. In the end, Yuan took out a Genesis-grade divine medicine as compensation. Only then did Ma Yujie's anger completely subside. Ma Yujie twisted his fat body and leaned closer to Zhuan. He said in a slightly vulgar manner, "Brother Zhua, did you come to the star battlefield this time for the dark ancient city?" Isn't Brother Ma here?" Zhuan asked in return. Of course it's because the corpse of ancestor Shaman Gonggong is in the dark ancient city. This is already known by everyone. If it wasn't for this, why would I come here? Wouldn't I have nothing better to do? Ma Yujie said. Then does Brother Ma have any insider information? Zhuan asked. Chapter 29-22. At the entrance of the dark ancient city. I'm not too sure about the inside information, and I'm not sure if the corpse of ancestral Shaman Gonggong really exists in the dark ancient city. After all, this information was released by that old dog Senki Yin, so its credibility is questionable. When Ma Yujie mentioned Senki Yin's name, his gaze was unfriendly, and he was even gnashing his teeth. When he was chased by Senki Yin, he cried for his parents and almost died. One could imagine how much hatred he had for Senki Yin. Is that so? That's a pity. But it's fate to be able to meet Brother Ma. How about this? Let's continue to cooperate in this exploration of the dark ancient city. This way we can take care of each other. Zhuan suddenly said. Ma Yujie's eyes widened, and he hurriedly waved his hand. Cooperation? Forget it, I'm more suited to be alone. Whenever I cooperate with others, I'm unlucky. Especially when cooperating with you, I'm basically unlucky. Zhuan's head was full of black lines. This damn fatty really didn't give him any face. He was treating him as a jinx. Even if he really treated him as a jinx, he should be more reserved with his words. It was really awkward to be so direct. Now, many people have already headed to the dark ancient city, and many experts from the foreign races have also arrived. It said that there was a fierce clash, and the cultivators and the foreign races suffered heavy losses. Brother Zhua, when you go to the dark ancient city, you have to be careful. Before Ma Yujie left, he left Zhuan with these words of warning. It seems that the dark ancient city is very unstable. Ordinary cultivators have a high chance of dying when they enter the dark ancient city. Yin Wuxia said with a serious gaze. Gui Ling pointed at the universal contribution ranking in front of the plaza and said, from this ranking, it can be seen that the dark ancient city isn't a good place. In the short 2 hours that Master was applying for the universal peak token, there were many people who disappeared from the ranking and were replaced by new names. This means that several geniuses on the universal contribution ranking have died in the past 2 hours. Zhuo nodded. Cultivators who were able to enter the universal contribution board were all geniuses that were 1 in 10,000. Normally, it would be very difficult for them to fall. But now, several of them had fallen within 2 hours. It could be seen how fierce the battle in the dark ancient city was. Not long after Ma Yujie left, Yuan also set off for the ancient city of darkness. The dark ancient city was located in the center of the Star Wars battlefield and was more than 10 days away from the star camping ground. The space-time roulette that Zhuan used was very fast. It only took him 5 or 6 days to reach the periphery of the dark ancient city. The environment around the dark ancient city was mostly a meteorite belt formed by countless black gravel. The area of the meteorite belt was very large, and it expanded outward layer by layer, as if it would never end. In the center of the meteorite belt, there was an extremely dense and evil black energy. This black energy was like chaos. It spread across the central area in an irregular manner and occupied most of the space there. Zhuan looked over and vaguely saw the outline of a giant black city within the black energy. It was just that the black energy was like a black fog that completely covered the details of the giant city. He could only see a very vague outline. Zhuan knew that the giant city hidden in the black fog was the destination of his trip, the dark ancient city. The moment he entered the meteorite belt, Zhuan also noticed that there were many streams of light shooting towards him at an extremely fast speed. Moreover, the target of these streams of light was the dark ancient city in the center of the meteorite belt. Zhuan's eyes were sharp. He noticed that the streams of light around him were not only human, but also foreign race figures. As he continued to get closer to the dark ancient city, Jun discovered no less than 10 battles. Among them, there were battles between cultivators and foreign races. Jun basically did not intervene in the battles between cultivators. However, Yuan actively intervened in the battles between cultivators and foreign races. Moreover, he very straightforwardly exterminated the foreign races. After all, killing foreign races gave him points. What he lacked the most now was points. He hoped to reach 1 million points as soon as possible and exchange them for the transcending heaven-grade spirit medicine he needed. However, the foreign races Zhuoan encountered along the way were too weak. They were basically trash in the first step of Dao confirming. Zhuoan only got 10 points for killing one of them. All along the way, Zhuoan basically used lightning-fast methods to annihilate all the xenorace beings he encountered. When he arrived at the Dark Ancient City, he'd already annihilated almost 100 xenorace beings, and the points on the Starry Sky token had reached almost 1,000 points. Zhuoan felt a little regretful. The foreign races he encountered along the way were all in the first step of Dao confirming. They were too weak. If he kept killing like this, when would he be able to collect 1 million points? The gate of the Dark Ancient City was a hollow gate formed by 2 huge black iron pillars. The top of the 2 iron pillars was connected by a black iron wire. At this moment, a group of thousands of people gathered in front of the gate of the Dark Ancient City. This group of people were basically all human cultivators. On the surface of the gate of the Dark Ancient City, there was an incomparably black barrier. This black barrier was very hard and had a tortoiseshell pattern on its surface. On both sides of the gate, there were 2 figures guarding it. One of them was a human cultivator, while the other was a merman with a black horn between his eyebrows and a body covered in black scales. Zhuoan brought Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia to the gate and immediately heard the angry voices of the human cultivators in front of the gate. Why can't you let us in just because we are rogue cultivators? Do rogue cultivators have no rights? The Dark Ancient City is a dangerous place in the Starry Sky battlefield. It is not the backyard of the 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect. What right does the 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect have to shut us out? Yes, the 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect is a little too overbearing. The voices of the crowd were protesting and criticizing the human cultivator guarding the gate. However, the merman crossed his arms and looked like he was watching a good show. Zhuoan landed in the crowd and listened for a while. He immediately knew why these people were gathered here. It turned out that these people were all rogue cultivators. The 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect had stipulated that rogue cultivators who did not belong to any sect did not have the right to enter the Dark Ancient City. Obviously, they did not want too many cultivators to come and plunder the Dark Ancient City. It should be known that in the entire Xianmi Heavenly region, the largest number of rogue cultivators happened to be these rogue cultivators who did not belong to any sect. Although rogue cultivators were much weaker than the cultivators of other sects, their numbers were much greater than the disciples of other sections. If they swarmed into the Dark Ancient City, they would definitely divide up the treasures that might appear in the Dark Ancient City. After all, although the Dark Ancient City was full of danger, the greater the risk, the greater the reward. The probability of treasures appearing in the Dark Ancient City was also very high. Chapter 29-23. The Fat Man Assuming the Tiger's Might, Overbearing? You're right. Our 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect is just that, overbearing. If you have the ability, then break the formation restriction in front of the gate for me to see. If you can break it, then I'll let you in. The human cultivator guarding the gate looked like a middle-aged man in his 40s. There were deep crow's feet at the corners of his eyes. Of course, Zhuoan knew that the middle-aged man's actual age was definitely much older than his 40s. At this moment, the middle-aged man's eyes were full of disdain. Even his tone was full of provocation and disdain. The middle-aged man's tone immediately angered the rogue cultivators who were blocked by the formation restriction. They all cursed him for being shameless. Zhuoan also knew that the middle-aged man's name was Gao Yi from the curses of the crowd. He was an ordinary deacon of the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect. He was not strong and was only a fated master. Among the rogue cultivators blocking the gate, there were many who were stronger than Gao Yi. However, due to the formation restriction outside the gate, they could only sullenly endure Gao Yi's disdainful gaze. If it was just the middle-aged man's mockery, the crowd would not be so angry. However, there was a foreign race standing beside the middle-aged man. Moreover, the foreign race was looking at them with a mocking gaze. This made them feel humiliated. One had to know that the war between the foreign race and the human race had been going on for countless years. The cultivators of the Xianmi heavenly domain hated the foreign race to the core. Now, this middle-aged man was standing guard at the gate with the outsiders, refusing to let them in. This was unacceptable to them. While the rogue cultivators were in an uproar, 3 streaks of light flew over from afar and finally landed in front of the gate. These were 3 mermen covered in scales. The 3 mermen did not care about the rogue cultivators who were blocked outside the gate. Instead, they went straight to the gate and said a few words to the merman guarding the gate. The merman nodded and let the 3 mermen in. Seeing this scene, the crowd was in an uproar. They all looked at Gao Yi angrily and questioned him for letting the foreign race in but not letting them in. Gao Yi was high and mighty, his eyes full of disdain as he said, "What do you all know? The dark ancient city is extremely dangerous. Most of the Dao Palace level forces in our Xianmi Sky Domain's 4 Dao domains have already come to an agreement with the foreign races, forming a temporary alliance. Before we find the corpse of Grand Wizard Gonggong, we will not attack. Instead, we will cooperate to explore and resist the unknown dangers in the dark ancient city. I'll be honest with you. The dangers in the outer perimeter of the dark ancient city have been swept clean by the alliance. Now, as long as you wander around the outer perimeter of the dark ancient city, you won't be in too much danger. Instead, you'll be able to reap some benefits and rewards. Could it be that you rogue cultivators who don't belong to any sects want to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor? I think you're dreaming. Now, get the hell out of here. You're all a disgrace to us human cultivators by gathering here." Gao Yi's voice was dripping with sarcasm as he raised his voice, intending to chase away the numerous rogue cultivators at the door. "Yo, you humans are really shameless. You don't even have the qualifications to enter the dark ancient city, yet you still gather here. Your skin is thicker than the city walls." The merman standing not far from Gao Yi revealed a disdainful smile as he began to mock them. "Thorpe, when you're ridiculing, it's best if you know who you're ridiculing. The ones who are shameless are these loose cultivators. Every single one of us sect disciples is a proud son of heaven. How can these loose cultivators compare to us? In my opinion, you human cultivators are all the same. What sect?" The merman Thorpe sneered. Gao Yi's expression was ugly as he said coldly, "Thorpe, aren't you being too presumptuous? At the very least, your merman race is still cooperating with our sect. Cooperation is cooperation. I'm mocking you because I want to. There's no need to implicate our cooperation. Our primitive heavenly realm believes in power above all else. As long as your fist is big enough, you can do whatever you want. You're the boss. Gao Yi, if you're not happy, you can fight with me directly. I'll accompany you to the end. It's really boring to talk like this." Thorpe chuckled. Gao Yi frowned slightly. He glanced at Thorpe and fell silent instead. Thorpe's cultivation was about the same as Gao Yi's, around the level of a master of destiny. However, Thorpe was a foreign race. His physical body was powerful, and his cultivation and physical strength were often much stronger than human cultivators of the same level. Unless they were monstrous geniuses with terrifying battle prowess, ordinary human cultivators were often much weaker than foreign race cultivators of the same level. Gao Yi admitted that he was not strong enough and was not Thorpe's opponent, so he easily admitted defeat. "You really are a coward. You humans are all the same. Am I right?" Thorpe sneered. His laughter was very savage and unrestrained. Gao Yi's face flushed red, but he did not dare to flare up at Thorpe. He could not help but vent his anger on the numerous rogue cultivators outside. He roared, "You bunch of trash, why aren't you scramming yet? If you don't scram, I'll activate the offensive restriction on this formation." Many rogue cultivators were unable to restrain their anger. This Gao Yi was really too cowardly. He was a guy who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Jun shook his head. He felt that Gao Yi was really a coward. Just as he was thinking about whether or not he should take action to break the formation, a voice suddenly rang out. Then, Zhuan saw a familiar fat figure trying to squeeze out of the crowd. I say you're called Gao Yi, right? This fat lord will give you a chance. Immediately open the formation and let this fat lord in. Otherwise, your fate will be very miserable. Zhuan took a closer look. Wasn't this fat figure Ma Yujie, who he had just separated from in the Starry Sky Pagoda? At this moment, Ma Yujie's face was very serious. His body exuded a dignified aura. For a moment, many rogue cultivators present were stunned. Many people discussed spiritedly. A cultivator with such an imposing aura probably had an extraordinary background. After all, this kind of aura was not something a trivial rogue cultivator could possess. Gao Yi was also intimidated. He revealed a hesitant look and asked uncertainly, "Who are you?" "Your grandpa Ma is me." When your grandpa Ma and your sect master Senki In exchanged pointers, you weren't even born yet. You can't even recognize me now? Is there shit in your head? Chapter 29-24. Arrogant for a moment, everyone present involuntarily retreated, distancing themselves from Ma Yujie. This fatty was labeled as mentally ill in everyone's hearts. Zhuan also consciously retreated, but his thoughts were different from the others. When Ma Yujie was spouting nonsense, he had already discovered that this fatty had secretly placed 2 array flags on both sides of the door. Furthermore, although the fatty's hands seemed to be waving randomly, he was actually making hand seals to break the array. He knew that the fatty was stalling for time to break the array. If one wasn't wrong, then the array formation set up on the gates of the dark ancient city was a Genesis Great Array formation. With Ma Yujie's array formation skills, it wouldn't be difficult to break it. However, breaking the array formation would still require a certain amount of time. Also, you son of a bitch better watch out for me. This is my brother, an existence that even your sect master has to address respectfully as grandpa. Now that you're blocking us outside, you're just looking for trouble for yourself. Fortunately, your sect master isn't here. Otherwise, your head would be kicked by me like a ball. Ma Yujie's eyes were sharp. He immediately saw Zhuowen's figure, who wanted to retreat with the crowd. He immediately pointed his right hand at Zhuowen, his voice full of pride. Zhuowen's body stiffened, but he was cursing in his heart. Brother, your sister. This damn fatty was indeed a narrow-minded guy. He was planning to drag him down with him. He was probably trying to take revenge on him for tricking this fatty. Sure enough, the moment Ma Yujie pointed at Zhuowen, the gazes of those rogue cultivators converged on Zhuowen. Then, they hurriedly retreated a large distance away from Zhuowen. Obviously, in their eyes, Zhuowen had also been labeled as a mentally ill brother. The veins on Gao Yi's forehead bulged, and his eyes were bloodshot. He glared at the fatty in front of the door and said, "Damn fatty, who do you think you are? A mere Heaven's Mandate master dares to call our sect master brother? Where does your confidence come from? And where does your intelligence come from? How can you say something so retarded?" Zhuowen glanced at Ma Yujie and shook his head inwardly. He refused to believe that this fatty's cultivation base was only that of the Mandate of Heaven. The last time he had met this fatty in the 10 Extremes In Corpse sect, he had not been able to see through this fatty's cultivation. Now, the aura he was releasing was only that of the destined master. He knew that the fatty must have deliberately disguised his cultivation level. As for the fatty's exact cultivation level, he still had not figured it out. However, he knew that the fatty's strength was probably not weaker than his. In fact, the fatty might even be slightly stronger than him. Otherwise, the fatty would not have been able to escape the pursuit of Senki In, Gao Yanghong, and the 10 Ultimate In Corpse sect experts. I'm just teasing you. If you're not convinced, then come out and bite me. What are you hiding in there like an egg? Ma Yujie was very despicable. He deliberately moved his fat head closer to the door and even used his right hand to slap Gao Yi's right cheek. He taunted arrogantly, "I'll stand here and let you hit me. If a coward like you has the guts, then hit my right cheek. Hit it hard, hit it lightly, and you'll be a coward." Gao Yi was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. However, he did not lose his rationality. He knew that even if he went out now and hit the fatty, there was a group of rogue cultivators outside. He would probably be surrounded and beaten up if he went out now. Good damn fatty. You're arrogant enough. Today, I'll let you see the price of angering me. Gao Yi snorted coldly and took out a compass-like formation plate. Immediately his right hand formed a seal. Suddenly, the formation in front of the door emitted a blazing white light. The energy within the formation also became violent, like a fierce beast that was about to awaken from its slumber. Ha, damn fatty, you're screwed. This is a God of Creation spell formation. It's combined with a powerful offensive formation that can rival the normal attacks of the average God of Creation. You're just a piece of trash that's destined to die under the attacks of this formation very soon. Do you have any last words? Gao Yi roared with laughter as he looked at Ma Yujie with disdain and contempt in his eyes. Ma Yujie chuckled coldly as he looked at Gao Yi as if he were looking at an idiot. You piece of trash, I'm not the one who should be leaving behind any last words. You should be the one leaving behind any last words. Ma Yujie chuckled coldly and he dropped all pretense. Zhuan nodded internally. He knew that Ma Yujie's plan to break the formation had already succeeded. Now, this God of Creation spell formation was completely under the fatty's control. You're about to die, and you're still quibbling? Gao Yi flew into a rage out of humiliation, and he formed a final hand seal. Immediately, the white light from the formation in front of the door reached its most intense state. Immediately afterward, an extremely terrifying attack erupted. Ha, you're dead meat. Gao Yi threw his head back and roared with laughter as he watched the scorching white light shoot out as a streak of light. However, Gao Yi's face soon stiffened. This was because he discovered that the streak of white light did not shoot towards the fatty in front of the door. Instead, it shot towards him. Ga? What's going on? Fear filled Gao Yi's eyes. Soon after, he was completely enveloped by the streak of white light. With a wail of agony, he completely lost all signs of life as he was blasted into nothingness by the streak of white light. The scene immediately fell silent. This unexpected outcome had stunned everyone. Meanwhile, the merman Thorpe returned to his senses. The corners of his eyes constantly twitched, and he immediately distanced himself from the door. What the hell was this formation? The attack it had unleashed was actually aimed at him. Was this murder or suicide? He had to distance himself as much as possible. Otherwise, he would follow in Gao Yi's footsteps. Outside the door, the independent cultivators who had retreated into the distance also stared at this scene in confusion. Clearly, they had never thought that the final outcome would actually be like this. As expected of Brother Ma, your formation skills have actually reached such a level. Zhuan looked at Ma Yujie's back with a rather solemn gaze. He discovered that this damn fatty's formation skills had improved a little compared to when he was in the 10 Extremes Een Corp sect. He was actually able to break the Genesis level formation at the entrance of the Dark Ancient City in such a short period of time and control it in his own hands. Zhuan possessed the profound meaning of the infinite primordial chaos, which could break all techniques. He was confident that he could break the formation within the door in a short period of time. However, it was somewhat difficult to reverse the formation and control it in his own hands. He was currently unable to do so. Clearly, Ma Yujie's formation skills were higher than his by a level. Hey, little trash, why are you retreating? Now that you know this fatty's honorable identity, let me in now. Otherwise, you'll end up like that nothingness. Ma Yujie patted his round belly and grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. When the merman Thorpe saw Ma Yujie's row of white teeth, he inexplicably felt a chill in his heart. This was not the first time Gao Yi had used the formation restriction of the door. Previously, there had been some unruly independent cultivators who wanted to rely on their cultivation to force their way in, but they were all destroyed by Gao Yi using the formation. However, just now, when Gao Yi activated the attack formation again, he was the one who was destroyed. It was really strange. Chapter 29-25. Barging in, you can come in alone. Thorpe pondered for a while before finally deciding to let the fatty in. He felt that the fatty should be an array expert, so he didn't dare to provoke him. It was better to let him pass. That's more like it. A little fish like you is sensible, unlike that idiot who didn't even recognize me. He's really short-sighted. Ma Yujia swaggered into Thorpe's open door and patted him on the shoulder. The latter could only force a smile and didn't dare to be rash. Zhuan knew that this was an opportunity and hurriedly followed, but Thorpe had already closed the door's restriction. I'm his brother, let me in, Zhuan said indifferently. Thorpe smiled apologetically. Just as he was about to open the door, Ma Yujia waved his hand and said seriously, "Little fish, is there something wrong with your brain? When did I say that this guy is my brother? Close the door and guard this door for me, understand?" Thorpe's face stiffened. He slowly withdrew his right hand that was about to open the door and hurriedly nodded and bowed to Ma Yujia. Not bad, do a good job. I have high hopes for you. Ma Yujia patted Thorpe's shoulder and swaggered off, heading towards the depths of the dark ancient city. Numerous rogue cultivators. Zhuowen's face instantly fell. This damn fatty's skin was really too thick. He was trying to kill him without paying with his life. Those who have nothing to do with this, scram. Don't gather here. As soon as Ma Yujia left, Thorpe immediately regained his arrogant nature and impatiently waved at Zhuowen and the others, telling them to get lost. Do you know who I am? Zhuowen arrived at the door and said calmly, I don't care who you are, as long as you're not that fatty's brother. Thorpe said coldly, Yes, that fatty is indeed not my brother, but I'm not someone you can afford to offend. Zhuowen's eyes were cold as he clenched his right fist. The surface of his fist emitted a sparkling and translucent light, and a vast and terrifying aura was exposed. Rumble! Zhuowen fiercely slammed his fist in front of the door. Immediately after, an explosive sound like that of a mountain collapsing and the earth splitting erupted. Soon after, countless cracks began to appear on the surface of the barrier. Finally, with a cracking sound, the entire barrier was destroyed by Zhuowen's brute force. Everyone was dumbfounded. Just now, the fatty had used array formation Dao to control the array formation restriction. His methods were already powerful enough. However, the young man in front of him was even more powerful. He directly used brute force to shatter the restriction in front of the gate into countless pieces. Thorpe let out a pained cry and fell to the ground. His entire body trembled as he watched the young man slowly walk through the door amidst the countless fragments of the array formation. What kind of freak was this guy? This was a god of creation stage formation. Even the average god of creation wouldn't be able to shatter it with brute force. But this young man had done it, and it didn't seem to be strenuous at all. Could it be that this guy was a master of creation? Of course, Zhuowen wasn't a master of creation. He had merely found the weak point of the array formation restriction in front of the gate. Moreover, this array formation had already been broken by Ma Yujia before and was now under his control. After Ma Yujia left, many flaws had appeared in the array formation, and its power was much weaker than before. Zhuowen had precisely grasped the flaw in this array formation. With a full-powered strike, it wasn't difficult for him to shatter this array formation. You. Thorpe was so frightened that he kept retreating, cursing inwardly. What was going on today? The arrival of the fatty was already terrifying enough. Now, an even more freakish person had arrived. He had actually shattered the array formation in front of the gate. This was really too unlucky. You what? That? Zhuowen cast a sidelong glance at Thorpe, who looked like he had seen a ghost. His right hand formed a claw and reached out towards Thorpe. Thorpe howled, his entire body erupting with the power of water as he unhesitatingly began to flee. Unfortunately, Thorpe was only a Heaven's Mandate Lord. In Zhuowen's eyes, he was far too weak. Zhuowen grabbed Thorpe with his claw. However, just as Zhuowen was about to crush Thorpe's body, Thorpe immediately revealed his true form, a shark. Thorpe's entire body was covered in a disgusting mucus. He actually managed to slip away from Zhuowen's claw and swiftly fled into the void. Your escape skill is not bad. Zhuowen's eyes flashed with surprise, but he wasn't surprised. his right hand formed a fist and punched out. Instantly, the space around him for tens of billions of li began to ripple. This fist contained the power of spacetime, reversing spacetime so that nothing in the surrounding spacetime could hide. Sure enough, in a certain spacetime, there was a miserable scream. Thorpe, who had fled into the void, fell to the ground not too far away. His entire body was drenched in blood and constantly twitching. He was already gasping for air and was not far from death. Zhuan casually sent out a divine flame and burned Thorpe to ashes, earning some points in his Starry Sky card. However, these points were very few. After all, Thorpe was simply too weak. He was only a Heaven's Mandate Lord. After killing Thorpe, Zhuan ignored the dumbfounded rogue cultivators behind him. Instead, he turned into a stream of light and entered the ancient city of darkness. In front of the gate, the rogue cultivators who had just come back to their senses were pleasantly surprised. The seal on the gate has been removed. We can also enter the ancient city of darkness. This is a rare opportunity. Everyone, hurry and enter. It was unknown who said this, but everyone swarmed into the dark ancient city. In the depths of the ancient city of darkness, in front of a massive mountain range, a large group of people was stationed. Among them were human cultivators as well as foreign race experts. However, the human cultivators and foreign race experts were clearly stationed on two sides, each minding their own business. At this moment, in the camp of the foreign race experts, the Merman race's representative, Sauron, had a very ugly expression. In his right hand, a black bead had already shattered. "Commander Sauron, why did you call me here?" A strong merman came in from outside the tent. He looked respectfully at Sauron and asked in a deep voice. "Li Yang, Thorpe's life pearl has shattered," Sauron said with a gloomy expression. "What? Thorpe was killed? How is that possible? Who is so bold as to kill a member of my merman race at the gate of the ancient city of darkness?" Li Yang said in shock. "Someone did it. Now, go to the entrance of the ancient city of darkness for me and help me find out who is so bold as to kill my brother," Sauron said with a murderous aura. Li Yang nodded, accepted Sauron's order, and left the tent. Although Thorpe was a very ordinary warrior in the merman race, he had a good older brother, Sauron. Sauron was a genius in the merman race who received a lot of attention and had a very high status. It was because of Sauron that Thorpe was qualified to come to the ancient city of darkness and was even sent to guard the gate of the ancient city of darkness. Because this was a job that was basically not dangerous, Sauron was also wary of Thorpe's low strength and was not willing to let him take the risk to protect him. Chapter 29-26. 4 kills, what rich energy! As expected of the dark ancient city. The moment Zhuan entered the dark ancient city, he could feel that the energy inside was extremely rich. It was many times richer than the outside world. The interior of the dark ancient city was basically filled with scattered black walls and ruins. It looked as if this used to be a grand and prosperous city, but because of an unknown war, the grand city had been reduced to ruins. The dark ancient city was very spacious and filled with layers of black fog. If it weren't for Zhuowen's powerful consciousness, it would have been very difficult to distinguish the direction in front of him. Zhuowen moved forward at a very fast speed. Although he knew that there were many good things in the periphery of the dark ancient city, with his current wealth, he really didn't care about the things in the periphery of the dark ancient city. And the things that he cared about were at least at the Genesis level or above. Treasures of this level were obviously not likely to appear in the periphery of the dark ancient city. As Zhuan continued to fly forward, he realized that there were several streams of light following him closely behind. To Zhuowen's surprise, although he was not flying at full speed, his speed was not something an ordinary cultivator could keep up with. However, he did not manage to shake off the several streams of light behind him. Clearly, they were not simple people. Zhuowen's eyes flashed as he stopped in front of them. The moment he stopped, the streams of light behind him also stopped, maintaining a safe distance from Zhuowen. Behind Zhuowen were 3 cultivators, 2 men and 1 woman. One of the men was an old man while the other was a young-looking youngster. As for the woman, she looked very young, probably around 17 or 18 years old. She had a pair of blinking big eyes that revealed a sense of purity, making people have a good impression of her at first glance. "Why are the three of you following me?" Zhuowen's eyes were calm as he looked at the three people in front of him and asked. With Zhuowen's eyesight, he could naturally see that these three people had come from the main entrance. They should be the cultivators from the group of rogue cultivators. The old man cupped his hands respectfully and said, "Brother, we would like to travel with you. Is that okay?" "Sorry, I'm used to traveling alone. I don't plan on forming a team." Zhuowen bluntly refused. The old man's face showed obvious disappointment, but the young man beside the old man looked inexperienced and said impulsively, "Hey, are you looking down on us just because you're strong? My grandfather is an eternal lord expert. Although you're strong, you're not much stronger than my grandfather. You should know that the dark ancient city is an extremely dangerous place in the starry sky battlefield. The risk of a person dying is very high. With our help, you will naturally get twice the result for half the effort. Cooperating with us will only bring you benefits. Little of the olds is. On the other hand, the young girl was curiously sizing up Zhuowen, as if she was very interested in Zhuowen. "Big brother, my grandfather is really powerful. If you go to the dark ancient city with us, it will be much easier. I'm not lying to you. Ame never lies." The young girl's big eyes were clear and pure. She was like a little sister next door. At first glance, one would have a good impression of her. As she spoke, the young girl trotted over to Zhuowen, and her jade-like hand reached out to pull Zhuowen. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and slowly stepped back. Although he didn't feel the slightest killing intent from the young girl, he felt that something was wrong. "Big brother, do you dislike Ame?" Seeing Zhuowen step back, the young girl's tender body stiffened. Her beautiful big eyes were slightly red, like a pear blossom in the rain. "I'm really sorry. I've already said that I'm used to traveling alone. As for cooperation, there's no need to talk about it," Zhuowen said indifferently. "Oh, Ame was rude. Big brother, I'm sorry." The young girl pouted. Her big eyes were full of resentment. She bowed deeply to Zhuowen to express her apology. However, Zhuowen felt that something was wrong. An inexplicable chill filled his body, causing all the hair on his body to stand on end. Immediately, he found that the young girl in front of him who bowed to him directly exploded, forming countless blood-colored energies. These blood-colored energies were like meteors. They quickly outlined around Zhuowen and formed a blood-colored barrier. A blood-colored light flickered behind Zhuowen. Zhuowen noticed it in advance. He took a step and dodged the blood-colored light behind him. Immediately, he focused his eyes and found that the blood-colored light turned out to be a blood-colored dagger. Zhuowen was no stranger to this blood-colored dagger. Wasn't it the weapon commonly used by the blood prison assassins? Moreover, this blood-colored dagger was covered with very mysterious patterns. The surface of these patterns was filled with an aura that even Zhuowen was afraid of. There was no doubt that this blood-colored dagger was much more advanced and powerful than the killing swords used by the blood prison assassins. Obviously, the person who attacked was definitely an expert of the blood prison. Clang. Similarly, a blood-colored light swept out from Zhuowen's sleeve and slashed at the blood-colored dagger that suddenly swept over, producing a rather ear-piercing sound of metal clashing. The blood-colored light was the blood immortal sword. Zhuowen took the opportunity to quickly retreat. Only then did he clearly see that the person who attacked him from behind was an old woman with white hair and a bumpy face. This old woman's face was ferocious, like a malicious spirit. You're quite vigilant. You actually escaped my sneak attack. You're much smarter than the Lord of Profound Secrets I've assassinated before. I like it." Although this old woman looked very ugly, her voice was as childish as a child's. Moreover, this voice was not unfamiliar to Zhuowen. It was the voice of the young girl just now. Obviously, the young girl just now should be this old woman in disguise. "Fourth kill?" Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and quickly noticed the word "for" on the cuff of the old woman's right hand. Obviously, this old woman was fourth kill of the blood prison's 7 kills. Zhuowen was very surprised. He had just killed 5th kill, 6th kill, and 7th kill a few days ago, and the blood prison actually immediately sent fourth kill. This action was too fast. Are you avenging fifth kill and the others? Zhuan asked with a gloomy look. Fifth kill? You met fifth kill and the others? Fifth kill and the others are really trash. They found you but couldn't kill you. If it weren't for the aura of the blood of my blood prison assassins on you, I wouldn't have known that you were the target of my blood prison. Fourth kill said sinisterly. Zhuan was speechless. It turned out that fourth kill was not sent by the blood prison to kill him. It turned out that he had sensed the aura of the blood prison assassins on him. However, on second thought, Zhuan felt that this was reasonable. After all, he had only killed fifth kill and the others a few days ago. No matter how fast the blood prison moved, it was impossible to send another member of the 7 kills to kill him in just a few days. Chapter 29-27. Liang Wush. While Zhuowen was deep in thought, the old man and the young man not far away had already removed their disguises and rushed out to attack Zhuowen. Their speed was very fast and they did not show any mercy. The old man and the young man were not weak. They were roughly at the peak of the eternal overlord realm. With the strength of the blood prison assassins, they had the ability to assassinate an early-stage creator. However, in front of Zhuowen, these 2 blood prison assassins were no threat to him. Get lost. Zhuowen snorted coldly and clenched his hands into fists. His body emitted a crystal-clear light, and a violent aura surged out. Boom! Zhuowen performed the tyrannical Dao slaughtering technique with both hands and blasted out both fists at the old man and the young man. The old man and the young man felt the terrifying power of Zhuowen's fist. Their faces changed, and they twisted their bodies like agile snakes, trying to avoid Zhuowen's terrifying fist. Unfortunately, Zhuowen had already anticipated their sudden change in direction. His fist transformed into a claw and quickly grabbed at the 2 of them. The old man and the young man were helpless. Seeing Zhuowen's claw coming at them, they knew that they could only face it head-on. It was obviously impossible to avoid it. Unfortunately, the moment the old man and the young man collided with Zhuowen's claw, the blood-red daggers in their hands were instantly shattered. Then, Zhuowen's claw mercilessly smashed at their chests. A terrifying force erupted, and the old man and the young man's chests instantly caved in. They screamed and were sent flying backward, crashing into the ruins not far away. Looking at the 2 dying and twitching bodies, their injuries were probably extremely serious. Although they were not dead, they were almost half dead. Bang! At this moment, Si Sha had blasted the blood immortal sword away. She happened to see this scene, and her pupils shrank. Although she had long expected that this boy's strength wasn't ordinary, she didn't expect him to be so strong. Her 2 subordinates weren't weak and were ranked in the upper echelons of blood prison, but in front of this boy, they couldn't even take a single blow. The blood immortal sword returned to Zhuowen's side. Its body was full of bumps and holes, and its brilliance was dim. Apparently, the blood immortal sword was extremely embarrassed by Si Sha and was now crying to Zhuan. You go back to the outside world first. I will avenge you. Let this old woman remember that not everyone can beat my people. Since she did it, she must pay a terrible price. Zhuowen's voice was cold. The blood immortal sword clearly understood. With a buzz, it entered the macro world. What did you say? Si Sha was crazy, looking at Zhuan. Her eyes were very unkind. Although her appearance was indeed that of an old woman, her status in the blood prison was very high and no one had ever dared to call her an old woman in front of her. Although fourth kill looked very disgusting, she was still a woman. No woman could stand being called an old woman by others. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have called you an old woman. Hearing Zhuowen's words, Si Sha's face became slightly better. She said coldly, Don't think that I will forgive you just because you said a few words of apology. Today, you will still die, but I may make your death look better. You may have misunderstood. I really shouldn't have called you an old woman. I should have called you a dead old woman, because you are going to die soon. Zhuowen immediately interrupted Si Sha's voice. His eyes were full of murderous intent, and all the power of the Peak Pangu's sacred body burst out from his body. He bounced his feet and burst out like an arrow. Wherever he passed, a terrible white cloud dissipated. It was very frightening. Little bastard, I must kill you today. How dare you insult me? Quadruple Killer was in a frenzy. His figure was erratic, leaving only a blurry bloody shadow in the void. Zhuowen was awe-inspiring and fearless. He swung out his fists and executed the Dao-slaughtering hegemonic arts. It was as if he was above the heaven Dao, and every punch he blasted out basically accurately smashed onto Sisha's drifting figure. Sisha was a little mad. At the same time, she was also a little shocked. She didn't expect that Zhuowen would know her position in advance every time. Moreover, he would throw a punch that landed on her body, forcing her to defend herself. What shocked her even more was Zhuowen's strength. This guy was clearly just Lord Xuanji, but the power of his punches was very strong. Every time she took a blow, her hands almost became numb. She really couldn't figure out how a mere Lord Xuanji could have such terrifying combat strength. She was Sisha of the Blood Prison. Her strength was already at the peak of the Creator Realm, and she would soon break through to the half-step Creator Realm. Her assassination methods and killing techniques were rare in the world. It was difficult to find a match. In the past, she had even killed an early-stage Creator Realm expert. Now, however, she was actually evenly matched with a cultivator from Lord Xuanji. This was not a fucking dream, was it? Zhuowen was also quite surprised. His Pangu's sacred body was still at the peak of the 5-star level. The strength of his every move was very terrifying. He had once guessed that with the current strength of his Pangu's sacred body, he could fight an early-stage Creator Realm expert. Of course, he might not be able to defeat one. However, it would be very difficult for an early-stage Creator Realm expert to kill him. Sisha was only at the peak of the Creator Realm. He had thought that it would not be difficult to get rid of Sisha. Now, it seemed that he had thought too much. Sisha's combat strength was very terrifying, especially her ghost-like movement technique. Sometimes, it was difficult to catch her. It had to be said that Sisha's strength was much stronger than Sisha, and Sisha combined. This made Zhuowen's heart sink. Sisha of the Blood Prison's 7 killers was already so difficult to deal with. Then, wouldn't the top 3 killers be stronger than Sisha? In other words, if he faced Sisha this time, he was afraid that he would not be a match for him. He would have to use his real trump card. Bang, bang, bang. The battle between Zhuowen and Sisha became more and more violent. Many nearby cultivators did not dare to get close to the battle range of the two of them. They were afraid that they would be involved in the aftermath of the battle and die without a burial place. Li Yang led 5 merfolk elites and aggressively walked towards the entrance of the dark ancient city. He wanted to know which bold cultivator dared to kill their mermaids. If he were to find out, he would definitely chop the culprit into pieces. However, when Li Yang approached the periphery not far from the entrance, he felt violent energy fluctuations coming from not far away. Li Yang's expression changed slightly. He was familiar with these violent energy fluctuations. Someone should be fighting. Originally, Li Yang did not pay attention to ordinary battles. He did not even bother to look at them. However, at this moment, the battle fluctuations were very strong. Li Yang was sure that this was at least a battle of the Creator Realm. The Creator Realm was an almighty in the 3rd step of Dao validation. Their strength was unfathomable. Whether it was the Xianmi heavenly domain or the primitive heavenly domain, such an expert was already considered an expert standing at the peak. Chapter 29-28 exposed the truth. What Li Yang was puzzled about was that this was clearly only the periphery of the dark ancient city. Why would there be such a great battle between experts of this level? Li Yang naturally didn't believe that it was for treasures. There were indeed a lot of good things in the periphery of the dark ancient city, but they were nothing to 3rd step Dao validation experts. Li Yang felt that it was ridiculous to fight over treasures outside the dark ancient city. My lord, when the 5 merfolk elites behind Li Yang saw that Li Yang had stopped, they looked at him in confusion, seeking his opinion. Go. Let's go over and take a look. I want to see what could cause a fight between 2 3rd step powerhouses. With a wave of his hand, Li Yang led his 5 subordinates towards the scene where Zhuowen and Forskills were fighting. Is it the 4th of the Blood Prison's 7 kills? At a glance, Li Yang saw the figure of the old woman holding the blood-red short sword. His eyes were filled with surprise. Although he was a merman from the Great Desolate Heaven Domain and not a human from the Shenmi Heaven Domain, he still knew about the various factions in the Shenmi Heaven Domain. This blood prison was a very special faction in the Shenmi Heaven Domain, so Li Yang naturally knew about it. He also knew that for an assassin like Quadruple Kill to be dispatched, the target that Quadruple Kill wanted to kill was probably not ordinary and had a complicated background. However, the moment Li Yang saw Zhuan, his face froze. This was because he realized that the young man who was fighting Quad Kill didn't have a strong aura. He was just Lord Xuanji. Holy shit, what's going on? Isn't it supposed to be a creator? Why is it just the Lord of Profound Secrets? Li Yang found this to be inconceivable. How could a mere Lord of Profundity be so powerful that he could fight against a peak creator like Xia without being defeated? And what was the background of this young man? Not only Li Yang, but many of the surrounding cultivators who were attracted by the aftermath of the battle also felt incredulous. Zhuan's cultivation aura was too weak, but his strength was so strong. This went against common sense. Behind Li Yang, one of his subordinates suddenly said, "Lord Li Yang, this human's main strength isn't his cultivation, but his physical strength." Li Yang narrowed his eyes. Only now did he begin to notice that the main power of the youth with 2 scars was indeed from his fleshly body that was emitting a sparkling light, and not from the energy of the heavenly Tao that human cultivators used. This human's physical body is very unusual. He's so strong. I'm afraid that even the strongest race in the primeval heavenly realm, the shaman race, which is known for their physical bodies, probably doesn't have such a monstrous talent. He's able to take on the Lord of Profundity's Quadruple Kill of a peak Lord of Creation. Zhuo Wen and 4 kills, who were in the midst of a battle, noticed the surrounding cultivators. That was especially true of the mermen that Li Yang brought over. They were particularly eye-catching amongst the surrounding cultivators. Zhuo frowned. Clearly, he had not thought that the merfolk would actually come. Was it because of Thorpe? Xia also saw Li Yang and the other merfolk. Her eyes shone with a strange, scarlet light. She sneered, "I didn't think that the merfolk would come. Looks like they already know that the gatekeeper has been killed. They've come to investigate. If he knows that the merfolk who killed the gatekeeper is right in front of him, I wonder what the merfolk will do?" Xia sneered as she looked at Zhuo mockingly. The young man's strength had exceeded her expectations. She suspected that Xia might have already been slain by him. She knew that she would not be able to take him down in a short period of time, but now that the merfolk had come to investigate Thorpe's death, things would be simple. Zhuo's gaze was rather hostile. He said coldly, "You won't have the chance to say who the real culprit is." With that, Zhuo's right hand formed a blade. Immediately, a shocking blade light erupted from his right hand. Soon after, a terrifying white light filled the entire starry sky. Everyone's eyes seemed to be left with only the soaring blade light. 4th Kill's pupils shrank. Her eyes were filled with fear. That was because the saber light was too terrifying. It made her feel like she was about to die. The blade light was very fast. It instantly landed in front of Xia. Xia only had the chance to raise her blood-red short sword. However, the moment her blood-red short sword collided with the blade light, she was horrified to find that her blood-red short sword shattered, and her entire body was shredded by the blade light. Seeing this, many of the surrounding cultivators looked at Zhuo in awe. Their gazes were filled with dread. Everyone could see Xia's identity, but such an expert had still been killed by this young man. Although Zhuo's aura was only that of the Lord of Mystery, in the eyes of many people, this young man was definitely hiding his cultivation. In reality, he was a very terrifying expert at the level of an old monster. Li Yang narrowed his eyes and looked at the young man with some dread. The blade light that the young man had released just now was very terrifying. Even he had to use all his strength to block it. It was clear that this young man was not simple. This young man is a rogue cultivator. He forced his way into the Dark Ancient City and even killed the gatekeepers at the entrance of the Dark Ancient City. One of them was from your merfolk race. I remember that guy was called Thorpe. Suddenly, not far from Liang, a gloomy voice sounded. Soon after, a blood-red piece of flesh grew continuously and finally turned into an old woman with a face full of wrinkles. This old woman was Si Sha, who had been killed by Jun. However, he did not expect Si Sha to still be alive. However, Si Sha's complexion was not very good. She was very pale, and her aura was somewhat weak. It was likely that Zhuowen's attack had caused her quite a bit of damage. Li Yang's gaze turned cold. He looked at Si Sha, who had been reborn, and said coldly, "You said this young man killed Thorpe?" Si Sha's voice was somewhat weak. She took out a crystal ball from her sleeve and tossed it to Li Yang, saying, "You can take a look at this if you don't believe me." Li Yang narrowed his eyes and looked at the crystal ball. There was an image playing in the crystal ball. The image was the scene of Zhuowen killing Thorpe. The veins on Li Yang's forehead bulged as he looked at Zhuowen with an unfriendly gaze. He growled, "Human, how dare you kill Thorpe? Do you know Thorpe's identity?" Zhuowen frowned. He did not care about Li Yang. Instead, he looked at Si Sha, who had been reborn. He did not expect Si Sha to still be alive. Chapter 29-29. Miserable Li Yang. Li Yang was enraged when he saw that the youth in front of him was ignoring him. A ferocious aura suddenly erupted from his body. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows and glanced at Li Yang of the merman race. Zhuowen's divine sense detected that Li Yang's cultivation was only at the late-stage Genesis Lord realm, which was slightly weaker than the quadruple killer. However, the aura that suddenly erupted was so terrifying that it was much stronger than the quadruple killer's peak. As expected of an alien race, you are indeed much stronger than human cultivators of the same level. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. It wasn't that he hadn't interacted with the alien races of the primitive heaven domain before. He had interacted with Kong Shi of the Phoenix people before. Therefore, he knew that alien races were much stronger than human cultivators of the same level. Of course, this depended on which alien race it was in the primitive heaven domain. After all, the alien races of the primitive heaven domain were also divided into different grades. For example, the top 10 races of the primitive heaven domain had powerful bloodlines. Even an ordinary member of the top 10 races was much stronger than human cultivators. Zhuowen had read books about the races of the primitive heaven domain before and knew that the mermaid race was one of the top 10 races of the primitive heaven domain. However, it was ranked last among the top 10 races. Even so, it was still one of the top 10 races of the primitive heaven domain. Its foundation wasn't any weaker than the Dao palaces of the Xianmi heaven domain. Although Li Yang's cultivation wasn't high, he was very strong. Even the quadruple killer's expression couldn't help but change slightly when she felt Li Yang's aura. However, she was soon overjoyed. Li Yang's strength was beyond her expectations. Even if she fought with Li Yang at her peak, she wouldn't have the confidence to win. She might even be killed. Now that Li Yang was going to attack Zhuowen, she knew that Zhuowen was going to suffer. When the time came, she would assist Li Yang. She knew that Zhuowen would definitely die. "Human, you think you are invincible after defeating the Blood Prison's quadruple killer? How dare you look down on me?" Li Yang's voice was slightly hoarse and filled with anger. When the quadruple killer heard Li Yang say that she was a piece of trash, she was so angry that she almost spat out blood. However, the quadruple killer was more rational and didn't act impulsively. She was now looking forward to Li Yang finishing Zhuowen. "No. It's just that in my opinion, you are even more trash than quadruple killer. I didn't even need to use that move just now to defeat you," Zhuowen said. He could tell that the mermaid's powerful strength was mainly amplified by her naturally powerful physical strength. If they fought head-on, how could Li Yang be a match for Zhuowen, who had cultivated the Pangu's sacred body? Was of the four killer was of the heavens. Was Li Yang. The quadruple killers of the god. Yang's of the heaven great was of the killer, was of the death. Was of the killer Yang god. If the quadruple killer fought Zhuowen head-on, she would have been defeated a long time ago. How could she fight with Zhuowen to such an extent? Li Yang was obviously the kind of person who fought head-on. Although the power he showed was indeed stronger than quadruple killer, Zhuowen found this kind of opponent easier to deal with than quadruple killer. In layman's terms, an opponent like Li Yang was completely restrained by Zhuowen's Pangu's sacred body. In other words, the alien races in the primitive heavenly realm who relied on their physical strength were also restrained by Zhuowen's Pangu's sacred body. After all, in terms of physical strength, Zhuowen was basically invincible among the same level. Zhuowen's words immediately made Li Yang burst into an uproar. Li Yang's eyes were wide open and his eyes were red. It was obvious that he was very angry. "You are really courting death. After killing Thorpe, you still dare to provoke me. Today, I will make you die a horrible death and then bring your body to Lord Sauron." Li Yang roared angrily. He kicked the void with his right foot, and a terrifying power spread out. He rushed out like an arrow and instantly rushed in front of Zhuowen. Boom! Li Yang clenched the 5 fingers of his right hand into a fist and fiercely punched toward Zhuowen's face. The force of his fist tore through the air and exploded with a deafening sound, as if thunder had struck the earth. Many of the cultivators present could feel the horror of Li Yang's punch. Even quadruple killer's face changed slightly. On the other hand, Li Yang's eyes were filled with ruthlessness. His punch relied on the combination of his cultivation and physical strength. Even a peak god of creation, who was quadruple kill, might not necessarily be able to take this punch head-on. Although the young man in front of him was strong and might be able to take his punch, he would probably pay a high price. "Idiot!" Zhuowen sneered. He opened his right hand and grasped Li Yang's fist. All the power of the Pangu's sacred body burst out as he clenched his fist. Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking rang out. Li Yang's pupils shrank into needles. The intense pain caused him to involuntarily let out a heart-wrenching scream. What? Li Yang is an elite of the merfolk tribe, and his physical body is extremely powerful. Even Pinnacle Genesis lords are no match for him. This young man actually managed to crush Li Yang's fist in a head-on clash. Just how terrifying is this guy's physical body? There are indeed some human cultivators who cultivate their physical bodies. However, even if these cultivators cultivate their physical bodies to be extremely strong, it is still difficult for them to compare with the physical bodies of foreign experts. It is easy for them to be at a disadvantage in a head-on collision. However, this guy really defies common sense. What is this guy's background? He is so strong and so young. I'm afraid he is also a peerless genius from a Dao Palace force. This kid is extremely unfamiliar. In the ancient city of darkness, I've seen monstrous geniuses like Zhongli Hao Yen and Yi Qidong, but I've never seen this kid before. I don't even know what faction he comes from. Everyone discussed animatedly, as if a pot had exploded. Clearly, Zhuowen's sudden display of this skill shocked them greatly. While everyone was discussing, Zhuowen's left fist landed on Li Yang's face. Li Yang screamed again as he was hit by Zhuowen and fell to the ground, creating a huge pit in the ruins. Quadruple Killer's mouth was slightly open as he began to retreat. Only now did she know that the young man in front of her was so terrifying. Fortunately, she did not fight him head-on in the beginning. Otherwise, she would end up even more miserable than Li Yang. Chapter 2930. The Power of the Fated Space-Time Kill, Run. Xia had grasped the timing very well. The moment Zhuowen knocked Li Yang to the ground with a punch, she used an escape technique and drilled into the void. Like a loach in water, she quickly escaped. Unfortunately, Zhuowen had long been on guard against Xia. Now that Xia was escaping quickly, Zhuowen sneered. He pointed at the void with his right hand and said indifferently, "Today, I'll use you to test my self-created remarkable ability, the Fated Space-Time Kill." A mysterious power shot out from Zhuowen's fingertip, and terrifying invisible ripples appeared in the surroundings. Soon after, an enormous purple river flowed out from the void behind Zhuowen. The purple river was very fast, chasing after Xia, who had escaped into the void. Strangely enough, wherever the purple river passed, it was as if time and space had stopped. Xia, who was shuttling through the void, felt it especially strongly. She only felt that time and space around her had stopped, and no matter how she escaped, it was like she was running in place. At the same time, she felt that the trajectory of her fate seemed to have been reversed, as if she was destined to be swept up and eroded by the purple river. This feeling of fate made her feel a sense of fear, a fear of the unknown power. When the purple river caught up with Sisha and swept her into it, Sisha let out a shrill scream and then lost all signs of life. The onlookers saw Sisha's body float out from the void in the distance. There were no injuries on his body, but Sisha had died just like that. Such an inexplicable death made the onlookers feel a chill in their hearts. They looked at the young man with the scar not far away, and their eyes were filled with awe and fear. But at the same time, they were even more puzzled. Who was this guy who had suddenly appeared? He was so powerful that he was definitely not a nobody in the Shenmi heavenly domain. But no matter how they looked at him carefully, they still could not figure out his origin. It was as if he had suddenly appeared. After Sisha and Li Yang died one after another, the 5 merfolk elites brought by Li Yang were filled with fear. They quickly sent a message to Zoro and quickly fled. Li Yang was a late-stage Lord of Creation powerhouse. He was quite a famous powerhouse in the merfolk race. Meanwhile, the 5 of them were only at the early stage of the God of Creation stage, so they were much weaker than Li Yang. Even if the 5 of them joined forces, they would at most be in a stalemate with Li Yang and might even be at a disadvantage. Now, the scarred young man who had suddenly appeared in front of them had killed Li Yang in an unstoppable manner. The 5 of them knew very well that even if the 5 of them joined forces, they would definitely not be a match for the scarred young man in front of them. If he didn't escape now, when would he? Zhuan looked at the 5 fleeing mermaids indifferently with a cold smile on his lips. However, he did not give chase. Instead, he slowly took out an ordinary wooden bow. This wooden bow looked very ordinary, and even a little shabby. The onlookers did not understand what was going on. They wondered why this person would take out such a useless wooden bow. This wooden bow did not have any divine artifact aura at all. At most, it was just a wooden bow from the mortal domain. Could it be that this person was planning to use this wooden bow to kill the 5 fleeing merfolk? It can't be, right? Isn't this guy too arrogant? He wants to kill 5 early-stage Lords of Creation stage merfolk with a wooden bow? This is simply too pretentious. This person has indeed gotten a little carried away. I want to see how powerful this shabby bow is. If he can't even kill a single merfolk, that would be too embarrassing. When they realized that Zhuan had really taken out an arrow and knocked it on the wooden bow, everyone's face was filled with black lines. It seemed like their guess was right. This guy really planned to use this broken bow to chase after the 5 mermaids. The 5 fleeing merfolk were actually a little on edge. When Zhuan had used the Destiny Space-Time kill earlier, Quadruple Kill, who had escaped into the void, had died inexplicably. Quadruple Kill was the 4th killer of the Blood Prison's 7 killers. Apart from the first 3 killers, Quadruple Kill could be said to be the strongest killer in the Blood Prison. The Blood Prison's killers were proficient in escape techniques, and Quadruple Kill was even more proficient in this. His escape technique was so fast that they could not even see his shadow. They originally thought that Quadruple Kill would definitely be able to escape. However, they did not expect that Quadruple Kill would die inexplicably after this young man used that strange technique. He did not even have any external injuries. They knew very well that if this young man also used that technique just now, they would definitely follow in the footsteps of Quadruple Kill and Li Yang. Therefore they were very smart. The moment they fled, they split into 5 different directions. This way, they would not be caught in one fell swoop. That technique looked very powerful. They guessed that there must be a limit to using it. If they fled separately, their chances of escaping would be much higher. However, they found that the young man behind them did not chase after them. Instead, he took out an ordinary wooden bow and wanted to kill them. This made them heave a sigh of relief. At the same time, they secretly mocked him. This guy was really arrogant. He actually intended to use such an ordinary object to kill them. He was simply ignorant. Zhuan naturally felt the strange look in the eyes of the surrounding people. The corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. He pulled the bowstring to 1/3 of an arc and immediately loosened his fingers. Boom! A thunderous sound resounded. The arrow swept out at an extremely fast speed with monstrous killing intent. It seemed to have transcended the limits of time and space. The moment the arrow swept out, the originally clamorous crowd became extremely silent. This was because they felt the terrifying killing intent on the arrow that swept out violently. That killing intent made them feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. It was too terrifying and difficult to face directly. A pained cry sounded out in the distance as a fleeing merman was shot by an arrow. Because he could not withstand the terrifying killing intent and power, he was directly torn to pieces by the power of the arrow. His body and soul were destroyed. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. This merfolk was an elite of the merfolk race. Although his strength was not as strong as Li Yang's, he was still an early-stage god of creation powerhouse. His status in the merfolk race was not low. Moreover, it was not easy to cultivate such a god of creation level merfolk. Now, he was directly killed by a wooden bow and an arrow. This was simply too shocking. Of course, among the spectating crowd, there were also discerning cultivators. They could tell that the arrow was not ordinary. It was a god of creation level divine arrow. However, even if it was a god of creation level divine arrow, it could at most injure a god of creation powerhouse. To kill a god of creation with a single arrow, especially one that was of the god of creation level, was simply too inconceivable. Could it be that this divine arrow was strengthened by the wooden bow? That's why it was so powerful? Some people thought to themselves. They looked at the slightly worn-out wooden bow in Zhuowen's hand with a serious expression. Chapter 29:31. Sapua. Ah! 3 miserable cries rang out as another 3 merfolk elites were killed by the divine arrows. All of them were killed by a single arrow. However, just as Zhuowen was about to fire his 5th arrow, the 5th merman elite actually turned around and charged toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows. Seeing the determined expression on the merman elite's face, he knew that this merman elite knew that he couldn't escape and wanted to fight with his life on the line. Since this merman elite wasn't going to escape, Zhuowen naturally didn't plan to waste his arrows. Even Li Yang had been defeated by him in a head-on battle. This god of creation initial stage elite mermaid was no different from an ant to Zhuowen. Zhuowen only needed one move to defeat this merman elite. I say, fighting with your life on the line is the biggest mistake you've made. I only need one move to... Zhuowen was just about to say something, but before he could finish, the merman elite kneeled down a few hundred meters away from Zhuowen. Sir, I failed to recognize Mount Tai. I shouldn't have offended you. As long as you spare my life, I'm willing to submit to you. This merman elite was trembling with tears and snot running down his face. He didn't dare to look at Zhuowen. Clearly, he was scared out of his wits by Zhuowen's methods. Zhuowen was a little dazed. This elite merman named Sapu was a little too tactful. Zhuowen originally didn't plan to let Sapu go. However, after thinking about it, he nodded and said, "Give me your divine sense imprint, and I can consider not killing you." Sapu straightforwardly gave up his divine sense imprint without hesitation. Then he thanked Zhuowen profusely for not killing him. Zhuowen was a little speechless. He was only considering not killing him, but this guy was taking it for granted. Putting away Sapu's spiritual soul imprint, Zhuowen did not intend to kill Sapu, but had other ideas. Although he had entered the dark ancient city, he was completely clueless about the path ahead. This Sapu obviously came from the innermost part of the dark ancient city, so he definitely knew where the temporary alliance between the alien race and human cultivators had explored. Moreover, he wasn't particularly clear about which forces were in the alliance this time. Furthermore, he had killed the elites of the merman race and killed an expert like Li Yang. He was afraid that he had offended the merman race. It was naturally inappropriate for him to go there rashly. He had to ask clearly before coming up with a countermeasure. At the same time, Zhuowen realized that after he had killed Li Yang and the 5 merman elites, the points on the Universal Star token had increased by over 9,000 points. Moreover, Li Yang alone provided him with 5,000 points, while the 4 merfolk elites each provided him with 1,000 points. In addition, he had already accumulated close to 1,000 points, which meant that he now had more than 10,000 points on the Universal Peak token. If Zhuowen was still in the Universal Star Tower, he would have seen his name appear on the universal contribution list. With more than 10,000 points, his ranking had already reached the 70th position. Because his ranking was relatively low and most of the cultivators in the Universal Star Tower were not around, Zhuowen's sudden appearance on the universal contribution list did not cause much of a stir. In fact, no one even noticed. However, Zhuowen was very distressed. His goal was to obtain 1,000,000 points to exchange for the transcending heaven-grade elixirs in the Universal Star Tower. Now, he had only accumulated 10,000 points, which was too far away from 1,000,000 points. Zhuowen also knew that he could not rush it. 1,000,000 points were not easy to accumulate. If others were to know of Zhuowen's distress, they would definitely be angered to the point of vomiting blood. Many cultivators had risked their lives in the Star Wars battlefield for hundreds or thousands of years, but they were still unable to enter the universal contribution list. However, this guy had only been in the Star Wars battlefield for a few days, yet he had already accumulated more than 10,000 points and even entered the universal contribution list. This speed was much faster than Zhongli Haoyan, who was ranked first on the universal contribution list, but this guy actually thought it was too slow. After all, there were relatively few cultivators who could surpass their level. Most cultivators' combat power was at an ordinary level. It was already very difficult for them to defeat foreign beings of the same level. There was even a high chance that they would be killed instead, let alone surpassing their level. Killing foreign beings of the same level and lower level gave cultivators very few points. It was only a dozen or even a few points. If one wanted to enter the universal contribution list, they either had to be terrifying geniuses like Zhongli Haoyan and Yi Qidong, who could surpass their level and kill enemies, or they had to be old foxes on the battlefield who had spent a long time accumulating a few or a dozen points. Most ordinary cultivators were cannon fodder. For people like Zhuowen, his original body's cultivation level was only that of the Lord of Mystery, but his clone cultivated the Pangu's sacred body. His true strength was very terrifying. The Universal Star Token clearly did not distinguish the Pangu's sacred body that the clone cultivated and gave all the credit to the original body. Therefore, Zhuowen had actually used the identity of the Lord of Mystery to surpass 2 major levels to kill the Lord of Creation. The points obtained from killing foreign beings 2 major levels above him were naturally very terrifying. "Come with me." Zhuowen picked up Sa Pu and disappeared on the spot. The surrounding cultivators all looked at the departing Zhuowen with fear, but no one dared to follow him. This was a ruthless person who could kill a late-stage Lord of Creation. He was too powerful. If they followed him and angered him, their lives would be in danger. However, there were indeed people who were not afraid of death. In the crowd, 3 figures quietly followed. They were very careful and very cautious. After leaving the crowd, Zhuowen came to the ruins of a palace that seemed to be intact. In the ancient city of darkness, ruins like this could be found everywhere. However, the ruins that Zhuowen had chosen were slightly more complete. Zhuowen casually threw Sa Pu to the side and said indifferently, "I saw you guys send a message just now. Was it to that Sauron you guys were talking about?" Sa Pu nodded and bowed. He lowered his head and said, "Yes, sir." "Tell me about this Sauron." Zhuowen said casually. "Sir Sauron is a genius of our merfolk race. He cultivated for less than 3,000 years and is already a peak Lord of Creation. His battle prowess is very strong, and his status in the race is comparable to that of ordinary elders. Sauron has a younger brother called Sa Pu. It's said that you killed him." At this point, Sa Pu seemed to be even more careful. He secretly glanced at Zhuowen, afraid that he would anger him. "I see. So Sa Pu has a genius brother." Zhuowen nodded, but he was a little surprised. Sa Pu's cultivation level was very low. He was only a Lord of Destiny. He had thought that he was just a small fry. The merfolk race would not go so far as to investigate him for a small fry. Chapter 2932. Blood Prison in a hidden void dimension in the host region. A huge blood-red palace floated. This blood-red palace drifted with the waves in the vast void dimension, drifting erratically like a ferry in the sea. This blood-red palace hidden in the mysterious void dimension was the lair of the blood prison. The blood prison's lair was a mystery to many cultivators in the host region, and almost no one could find its location. No one expected it to be hidden in the void dimension. After all, the void dimension was too big and dark. There was nothing inside, only nothingness. Cultivators who entered the void dimension could easily get lost, let alone find the blood prison's lair. The largest palace in the blood prison was filled with blood-red light, accompanied by a nauseating smell of blood. It gave off a very strange atmosphere. The palace was very large, but there were very few things inside. Apart from the thick blood pillars standing inside, the palace was exceptionally spacious. There were 7 seats in the palace at the very front. Each seat was forged from an unknown skeleton, and its surface was dripping with blood. It was very strange. At this moment, among the 7 seats, the 3 seats in the middle were burning with blood flames. A pair of strange eyes appeared in each of the 3 balls of blood flames. Old 5, Old 6, and Old 7 failed their mission. Old 5 and Old 6's life aura has disappeared. I'm afraid they're dead, the leftmost blood flame said in a hoarse voice. Since Old 7 didn't die, why didn't he return? What's going on? The rightmost blood flame asked in confusion. Old 7 is the weakest, but he didn't die and didn't return to the blood prison immediately. I'm afraid he was captured alive. The rightmost blood flame spoke, his voice carrying a dignified aura. The rightmost blood flame was the true master of the blood prison. He was one of the blood prison's 7 killers and had a fierce reputation in the Eastern Wei region, causing many cultivators to tremble in fear. Big Brother is right. Old 7 didn't die and didn't return. He must have been captured alive. It seems that the target this time is quite smart, but he thinks he's smart. The rightmost second killer sneered. The blood prison assassins have sworn to the heavenly Tao that they will never allow any thoughts of betrayal. Although 7th brother is more greedy for life and afraid of death, he does not dare to violate the heavenly Tao oath. After all, 7th brother went against his oath to the heavenly Tao. His fate is even more terrifying than death, 3 kills said nonchalantly. Suddenly, when 3 kills and 2 kills were discussing the matter of 7 kills, the blood flame that represented 1 kill suddenly surged and became very violent in an instant. Big Brother, what's wrong? Second kill and third kill looked at first kill in confusion. Bloody flames flickered. After a long time, Isha's figure came and said, "Fourth sister's life force has also disappeared." Hearing this, the pupils of second kill and third kill shrank, and they exclaimed at the same time, "Impossible!" The quadruple killer was very powerful, far more powerful than the quintuple killer. He was also an assassin that the 3 of them had focused on nurturing. With Quadrikill's talent in slaughter, it would be more than enough for him to surpass the 3 of them in the future. The 3 of them had placed a lot of hope on Quadrikill. But now, 4th kill had also fallen. For them and the blood prison, this was undoubtedly a great loss. Big Brother, I remember that 4th sister was planning to go to the dark ancient city in the star battlefield to investigate the situation of ancestral shaman Gonggong, but she was actually killed. Do you know who killed her? 3 kills said with an ugly expression. Before 4th sister died, she sent me an image. The person who killed her is this person. As 1 kill spoke, he projected an image into the sky. The image in the image was the disguised Juan. There are traces of disguise on this person's face. This is not his original face. Second kill said, hitting the nail on the head. Yes, I also saw this guy's battle. His target is basically the same as quintuple killers. He should be Zhuoan in disguise. 1 kill said, his eyes flashing with killing intent. Oh, it's this guy again. He's really going too far. I remember that this guy killed a lot of people in our blood prison. I didn't care about him at first, but now he has become so strong that even Quadrikill was killed by him, second kill said in surprise. Big Brother, second brother, let me do it this time. Our blood prison can't just fight back. Otherwise, the prestige of our blood prison will be gone, 3 kills suddenly said. With third brother's strength, it's no problem to deal with Zhuoan, but I always feel that this boy has some kind of powerful trump card. Third brother, you'd better be careful, second kill reminded. 3 kills nodded, indicating that he understood. At the same time, he cupped his hands and said, "Big brother, I still need some people to assist me. I'm going to set up the blood-splashing limitless array. This time, it's either success or failure." When 1 kill and 2nd kill heard that 3 kills was going to set up the blood-splashing limitless array, their faces changed slightly. The blood-splashing limitless array was a terrifying killing array of the blood prison. It had been passed down in the blood prison for countless years, but because the cost was too high, it had been listed as a forbidden technique in the blood prison. The blood-splashing limitless array needed 1 person to preside over the array I and 108 people to support the array, which were arranged in 108 positions of the array. At the same time, the energy source of the blood-splashing limitless array was provided by the blood essence of the 108 cultivators. In other words, the blood-splashing limitless array was operated by absorbing the blood essence of the 108 cultivators. In the past, there had been a sect master of the blood prison who, in order to kill an early-stage transcending heaven lord, had sent over a blood-splashing limitless array master. 108 early-stage Lord of Creation assassins were called over, and they set up the Sanguine Limitless formation. In the end, the early-stage Lord of Creation was killed within the Sanguine Limitless formation. The final price was that the 108 early Lord of Creation assassins had all perished, and the blood prison sect master had lost too much essence blood. His cultivation had plummeted, and he had barely managed to stay alive. However, he was basically a cripple. It could be said that the blood-splashing limitless array was a great array that harmed others without benefiting oneself. This was also why it was listed as a forbidden technique in the blood prison. Now that 3 kills was preparing to use the blood-splashing limitless array again, it seemed that he had made up his mind to kill Juan. Third brother, the side effects of the blood-splashing limitless array are too great, and it will consume a lot of your energy. This method is not suitable, 1 kill said hesitantly. 3 kills laughed cruelly and said, "Big brother, second brother, you worry too much. The side effects of the blood-splashing limitless array are indeed great. I naturally won't take the risk easily, but I have a more suitable candidate." 1 kill asked. Chapter 29:33. Traceless Blood. So it's that guy. Ever since Traceless Blood returned from the 8 heavens, his talent seems to be even more terrifying than before. His cultivation base is constantly breaking through. I remember that he had just officially stepped into the 3rd step of the Tao validation stage, and his cultivation base has reached the early stage of the creator stage. 2nd kills nodded. He had some impression of Traceless Blood. When Traceless Blood had gone to the 8 heavens, although his talent was not bad, it was not enough to attract their attention. However, ever since Traceless Blood's return, his talent seemed to have been injected with chicken blood, and his cultivation speed was unbelievably fast. In just a short 100 years, Traceless Blood had advanced from the peak of the Destiny stage to the early stage of the Creator stage. This cultivation speed was simply cheating. Yes, letting Traceless Blood take charge of the Blood Splash Limitless formation is the best choice. When the time comes, third brother can help from the side. That Juan will die even if he doesn't go to heaven or hell. 2nd kills said with a laugh. Yes, let's do that. After all, third brother is one of the blood prison's 3 killers. His status is not ordinary, and he doesn't need to put himself in danger. Traceless Blood is the most suitable candidate. All right, third brother, second brother and I will continue our seclusion. We'll wait for you to bring back good news. After 2nd kills finished speaking, the crimson flame on the seat in the middle gradually extinguished, and so did 2nd kill's crimson flame. The bloody flames of triple kill surged violently, as if they were about to set a prairie ablaze. Finally, a figure slowly walked out of the terrifying bloody flames. It was a middle-aged man with a square face. He was very burly, and even his loose crimson clothes could not hide the strong lines of his muscles. This man was the true face of the blood prison's 3rd killer. Triple Kill flicked his finger and sent out a red message. Then he casually sat down in his seat, as if he was waiting for someone. Not long after, a crimson figure flew in from outside the palace. Immediately after, a man knelt on one knee in front of him. The man kneeling on one knee did not look very old. His face was chiseled and he was quite good-looking. Master 3 Kills, may I know why you've called me here? Shui Wuhen asked in a low voice, his voice full of respect. Wu Hen, I have a very important task for you. If you can complete this task well, I will promote you into the ranks of the Blood Prison's 7 killers. 3 Killers said lightly. Traceless Blood's pupils shrank when he heard that. He raised his head abruptly and looked at 3 Kills. His eyes were filled with excitement, and his chest heaved up and down violently. Traceless Blood suppressed the excitement in his heart and said in a low voice, Lord 3 Kills, please tell me what to do. As long as I can do it, I will not disappoint you. 3 Kills nodded and said, the mission I want to give you is very simple. I need you to cooperate with me to kill someone. Traceless Blood's eyes flashed with shock. He hadn't thought that Blood Prison's 3rd killer would be preparing to kill someone. Moreover, he would need his cooperation. Didn't this mean that the target of this assassination was not simple? Traceless Blood gritted his teeth and said, Lord 3 Kills, how should I cooperate? Please tell me. 3 Kills nodded secretly and said, I'm going to activate the blood-splashing limitless array. You will be the host of the blood-splashing limitless array. Don't worry, I will send 108 elite killers to cooperate with you. Traceless Blood fell silent. His eyes flickered, revealing a look of hesitation. The blood-splashing limitless array was famous in the Blood Prison and the host region. It was a killing array that had once killed a master at the early stage of sky-reaching realm. However, Traceless Blood was more aware of the horror of the blood-splashing limitless array. Its side effects were very severe. Whether it was the 108 elite killers who assisted or him who presided over the array, they all needed to contribute a corresponding amount of blood essence to the operation of the array. Blood essence was the life essence of a practitioner. If too much of it was lost, it could easily be life-threatening. Noticing the hesitation in Traceless Blood's eyes, 3 Kills said lightly, if you feel embarrassed, you can refuse. I will find someone else. Traceless Blood clenched his teeth and said, Sir 3 Kills, I agree. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As long as he did well this time, he could enter the ranks of the Blood Prison's 7 kills and enjoy the highest status and treatment in the Blood Prison. Traceless Blood really didn't want to give up this opportunity. After all, if he missed this opportunity, he didn't know how many people he would have to kill before he could finally enter the ranks of the Blood Prison's 7 kills and be on equal footing. Good. Traceless Blood, I really didn't misjudge you. Not only is your talent superb, but even your temperament is excellent. Your future is limitless. Seeing Traceless Blood agree, 3 Kills nodded with satisfaction. Let's go. Come with me to prepare the materials for the blood-splashing limitless array and select the 108 elite killers. With a wave of his sleeve, 3 Kills left the palace with Traceless Blood. In a remote corner of the dark ancient city, Wen was still asking Sa Pu about the situation of the merfolk race. How many people have come from the merfolk race this time? Is Sauron the strongest? Zhuan's eyes flashed as he began to ask the merfolk elite, Sa Pu, about the merfolk race. Sa Pu clearly knew his situation. He had no right to refute Zhuan. As long as it was Zhuan who asked, he basically answered. After some questioning, Zhuan roughly understood the situation of the merfolk race that had come to the dark ancient city this time. The merfolk race was one of the 10 great races of the primitive heaven realm. They had a strong foundation and weren't the slightest bit inferior to the 10 extremes Een Corps sect of the host region. This time, the merfolk race didn't send many merfolk, only a dozen or so. The main person in charge was an early-stage creator realm elder. This elder was called MDA. Among the many elders of the merfolk race, he was one of the elders with a high status and was very powerful. In the sect, Sauron's status was actually about the same as MDA's. Thus, although MDA was the person in charge this time, he would always ask for Sauron's opinion before making a decision. In reality, the person in charge should be MDA and Sauron. This time, the merfolk race had also sent their elites. Whether it was Li Yang or the 5 merfolk that Li Yang had brought, their cultivation was basically at the creator realm or above. In the Xianmi heavenly domain, this kind of cultivation was an expert who stood at the peak and was revered by tens of thousands of people. However, the merfolk race had sent over a dozen elite experts of this level all at once. It was clear that they attached great importance to the dark ancient city this time. Of course, if Sauron and MDA found out that Li Yang and the 5 merfolk elites that they had sent out had basically been killed by Zhuowen, only Sapu was left, and he had even become Zhuowen's servant. The two of them would probably vomit blood. After learning that the strongest person in the team sent by the merfolk race this time was only at the early stage creator realm, Nguyen heaved a sigh of relief. Although the strength of a foreign race was much stronger than that of a human cultivator of the same level, Nguyen guessed that MDA's strength was at most equivalent to a mid-stage creator realm human cultivator. If Zhuan used his peak 5-star Panga's sacred body to fight against an expert of MDA's level, it would naturally be strenuous and unrewarding. However, he had many trump cards. The power of the Ho-E Divine Arrow combined with the Ho-E Divine Bow had even injured a half-step creator realm expert like Gao Yanghong of the 10 Extremes Een Corp sect. Chapter 2934. Son, that's right, Master. We sent a message to Master Sauron just now. I think Master Sauron will be here soon, Sapu said in a trembling voice. Where did you tell Sauron? Nguyen asked. It's the place where you fought Master Li Yang. Sapu said carefully. Sapu, send another message to Sauron. Tell him that Li Yang and his 4 lackeys are all dead and that the murderer is here. Zhuowen instructed calmly. Sapu was dumbfounded upon hearing this. What kind of person would tell the person who was seeking revenge his location after killing someone? Wasn't that asking for death? Sapu knew that this human cultivator was extraordinarily powerful and could easily defeat a late-stage god of creation like Li Yang. However, Sauron was different. Perhaps Sauron's cultivation level was only a minor level higher than Li Yang's, but he was far more powerful than Li Yang. Even the leader of the merfolk tribe, MDA, was not confident of defeating Sauron in a short period of time. As for Li Yang, compared to Sauron, he was even weaker. Sauron could defeat Li Yang in a few moves. Sapu knew how terrifying Sauron was and did not think highly of this human cultivator. However, this human cultivator was simply overestimating himself. He actually planned to lure Sauron out. Master, what you're doing isn't right. Before Sapu could finish speaking, he was frightened into silence by Zhuowen's cold glare. Send the message. Zhuowen's tone was cold as he spoke to Sapu in a commanding tone. Sapu was helpless. He knew that Zhuowen had already made up his mind, so he could only send another message to Sauron, telling him where Zhuowen was. At this moment, there were still some cultivators who had not left the place where Zhuowen, Li Yang, and 4 slayers had fought. Instead, they were gossiping about the battle between Zhuowen, 4 slayers, and Li Yang. I wonder who that fellow cultivator was? He really gave us human cultivators face. He beat the shit out of the merfolk tribe. Especially that merfolk at the end. The way he begged for mercy was too funny. How shameful. Among this group of people, there were 3 people who were discussing the most intensely. Looking at their impassioned appearances, Zhuowen's display of invincibility against the group of mermen earlier had greatly vented their anger. Rumble. Suddenly, a gigantic palm descended from the sky like a mountain and landed on the heads of the 3 cultivators who were having the most heated discussion. The 3 cultivators didn't even have the chance to make a sound before they were smashed into smithereens by the palm. They couldn't be more dead. An invisible shockwave spread in all directions, causing the surrounding cultivators to shudder. Their eyes were filled with dread and awe. An unusually tall merman dashed over. At this moment, he slowly withdrew his right hand. Clearly, that palm strike just now was the merman's masterpiece. It's Sauron of the merfolk race. I didn't expect him to come so quickly. His younger brother and his capable subordinates were killed for no reason. This Sauron is probably mad. It's best if we don't provoke him. The surrounding people discussed animatedly and couldn't help but distance themselves from the merman who had suddenly appeared. Sauron's aura was extremely strong, and his body was several times taller than Li Yang and the 5 merman elites. The scales on his body were also pitch black. Sauron landed in the arena, and the surrounding people subconsciously retreated once again, not daring to raise their heads and look at Sauron. "Where's that damned human? Where did he go?" Sauron suppressed the anger in his chest, looked around at the crowd and asked coldly. "We don't know where that cultivator went either. He was too fast, we couldn't catch up to him at all." "Right, it's useless to ask us. That cultivator is too powerful. His speed is beyond our reach." Several cultivators in the surroundings retorted in low voices. However, as soon as they finished speaking, Sauron grabbed them with one hand. Soon after, he exerted force in his palm and those cultivators were instantly killed by Sauron. For a moment, no one dared to refute Sauron. At this moment, Sauron was like a tyrant, looking down at the surrounding people from above. The surrounding people were like subjects that had submitted to him, not daring to make a sound. Just as Sauron was about to kill all the cultivators here to vent his anger, his communication jade talisman suddenly lit up. After looking at the message on the communication jade talisman, he narrowed his eyes and was filled with killing intent. "What an arrogant fellow! How dare he provoke me? He's courting death." Sauron no longer cared about the surrounding cultivators. Instead, he took a step forward and disappeared on the spot, causing the surrounding cultivators to be puzzled. In the southeastern corner of the dark ancient city, in the illusory ruins, Yuan and the merman stood quietly. Sa-Pu stood behind Zhuowen, his legs somewhat weak. This was because not only did Zhuowen ask him to send their current location to Sauron, but he also sent a lot of provocative words to Sauron. Sa-Pu knew that if Sauron received his message, he would definitely go crazy with anger. At that time, not only would Sauron not let this human cultivator in front of him off, he would also not let him off. Thinking of how terrifying Sauron was, Sa-Pu was already trembling in fear, not knowing what to do. On the other hand, Zhuowen put his hands behind his back and looked into the distance. In the depths of his eyes, there was a burning desire to fight. This time, Yuan only sent out his clone, while his original body hid in another ruin. His peak 5-star Panga's sacred body was very powerful, but he had not been able to find an evenly matched opponent to test how powerful it was. He learned from Sa-Pu that Sauron was a famous genius of the Merman clan. His combat strength was very terrifying, and he could even fight against the powerful elders of the clan. He knew that he had found an opponent. He wanted to see if his peak 5-star Panga's sacred body was a match for Sauron. Of course, even if he was not a match for Sauron, he still had his original body. Zhuowen had left the Ho-E Divine Arrow and the Ho-E Divine Bow with his original body for safekeeping. If he was not a match for Sauron, his original body would shoot the Ho-E Divine Arrow and guarantee that Sauron would be killed. A stream of light quickly swept over and finally stopped in front of the ruins where Zhuowen was. Zhuowen looked at the unusually tall merman that stopped in front of him and could not help but narrow his eyes. The merman in front of him should only be at the peak of the Lord of Creation, but the aura emanating from his body made Zhuowen very wary. He was much, much stronger than the Liang that he had killed before. "Master, Lord Sauron has a special bloodline, and his strength is many times stronger than ordinary mermen. You'd better be careful. He is much more terrifying than Lord Liang. You must not be careless." Sa-Pu carefully reminded behind him. His life was now tied to Zhuowen's. Chapter 29:35. To share the limelight, Zhuowen nodded, but the battle intent in his eyes grew even stronger and shot straight into the sky. Sauron stopped not far from the ruins, and his cold gaze fell on the human cultivator in front of him. Of course, he also saw Sa-Pu behind Zhuowen. "Sa-Pu, you've done well to provide me with the location of this human cultivator. Seeing that you've done well, I've decided to overlook the disrespect you spoke to me through the communication jade talisman." Sauron's voice was very cold. Sa-Pu trembled and did not dare to speak. "You must be Sauron of the merfolk race." Zhuowen casually continued, "You might have misunderstood. The reason why Sa-Pu exposed my location to you was not because he was loyal to you, but because of my orders." "Your orders?" Sauron's face turned ugly as he stared coldly at Zhuowen. Soon after, he burst into laughter and said, "What a joke! If it was really your order, Then your head must have been kicked by a donkey. You're actually courting death. Whether I am courting death or not, you and I will know after a battle. I heard that you have a special bloodline and have a special status in the merfolk race. You are a genius that is focused on nurturing. Zhuan's eyes were calm. He put his palms together and his body emitted a sparkling light like a spotless glass. Today, I want to see if a genius of the merfolk race like you or me has a stronger body. Boom. The instant Zhuan said the word big, the sparkling and translucent light on his body had already reached its peak, and Zhuan shot out like a cannonball, disappearing from where he stood, exploding with a terrifying thunderous sound. Arrogant and conceited human, competing with my merfolk race in terms of physical strength. You simply don't know how to write the word death. Sauron sneered again, and the pitch-black scales all over his body stood up. He stomped his right foot, and a large area of the starry sky under his feet collapsed, and he also disappeared on the spot. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, the two of them were like two phantoms, and they exchanged more than 10 blows in the air. Each collision was like a comet hitting Earth, like a star exploding. The aftermath of the battle spread out, and cultivators below the third step of Dao validation did not dare to face it directly. Pucci Sa Pu, who was watching from the ruins, was caught off guard. He was hit by the shockwave, and many cracks appeared on his body. His internal organs seemed to have been torn apart, and he was seriously injured. If Sa Pu hadn't reacted in time and immediately retreated far away, he would have died in the aftermath of the two people's battle. To think that the battle between Master and Sauron would be so terrifying. It's probably already at the level of the Master of Creation. Sa Pu's eyes were wide open. His heart trembled with fear and disbelief. Bang, bang, bang. Continuous explosions rang out in the void. Immediately, the two phantoms that were originally fighting fiercely separated upon contact. They both retreated tens of thousands of meters away and faced each other from a distance. Sauron looked at Zhuan, who was glowing brightly. His eyes narrowed, and his heart trembled. The bodies of non-humankind beings were much stronger than those of human beings, and they had a natural advantage. Their merfolk race was one of the top 10 races in the Great Desolate Heaven domain. Although they were ranked last, they were still a top race in the Great Desolate Heaven domain. Their innate advantages were greater than ordinary foreign races. Sauron also had a special bloodline. Even in the entire merfolk race, he was a first-rate genius. Although Sauron hadn't truly unleashed the power of his special bloodline, Sauron's body was still much stronger than that of ordinary merfolk. However, this human cultivator in front of him, who didn't have any innate advantages at all, was actually able to fight him head-on with his body and not be at a disadvantage. This was really unbelievable. Sauron had never believed that a human cultivator's body could be stronger than a foreign race's. However, he had to believe it now. This human cultivator in front of him was simply a freak. How did this guy cultivate his body? Zhuan was also moved. He originally thought that Sauron's cultivation level was only a small realm higher than Li Yang's, and his strength wouldn't be much stronger. With his peak 5-star Pangu's sacred body, he would be able to crush Sauron. However, the battle just now had completely exhausted his hopes of being lucky. Sauron was much stronger than Li Yang. They were simply not on the same level. Human, I underestimated you. Sauron's gaze became serious. He knew that this human in front of him couldn't be underestimated. He actually had such a powerful combat strength. No wonder this person dared to make such a bold statement. He still had a few real moves. You're not bad either, Zhuan said, but his eyes were full of fear. He could feel that Sauron hadn't used his full strength in the battle just now. Of course, Zhuan hadn't used his full strength either. After all, he had purely fought with Sauron with his body. He hadn't even used the Dao slaughtering tyrannical technique. If he had used the Dao slaughtering tyrannical technique, his combat strength would have increased by at least 1/3. Humph! Do you think you can open a dye house just because I gave you some power? The ignorant are fearless. Now, I'll let you see the true power of my bloodline. Sauron snorted coldly, and there was a trace of anger in the depths of his eyes. What he was most proud of was his physical strength. especially the special bloodline hidden in his body. With this special bloodline, he could look down on all his peers in the merman tribe. Even in the sorcerer tribe, the most powerful tribe in the primitive heaven realm, he, who had a special bloodline, had a place. Now, he was being looked down upon by the human he looked down on the most. To him, this was a humiliation. He had to kill this human cultivator to wash away this humiliation. Otherwise, this would become his inner demon in the future. The pitch-black scales on Sauron's body began to turn blood red, and the aura on his body suddenly increased by dozens of times. There was a trace of murderous sharpness in the fierce aura. As the scales turned red, ferocious blood-red spikes grew out of Sauron's joints, emitting a chilling aura. Human, I only need to activate 1/3 of my bloodline to deal with you. It's enough to kill you. Sauron's low voice drifted in the surroundings, and Sauron himself had already disappeared. Only the terrifying thunder-like explosion could be heard around him. Zhuon turned around abruptly, and his right hand formed a fist that emitted a sparkling light as he struck out. Boom! A blood-red fist swept out from behind Zhuon, and the fist force that Zhuon had thrown out just happened to collide with the blood-red fist. Instantly, the surrounding air waves swept out. Zhuon let out a muffled groan and couldn't help but retreat. He was a little surprised in his heart. Zoro's punch was several times stronger than before, and he was actually at a disadvantage after taking the blow head-on. Bang, bang, bang. The moment Zhuon retreated, Sauron's attacks instantly became fierce. It was obvious that he wanted to take the initiative. Zhuon's gaze was sharp, but he was not in a hurry. His hands were like lightning as he executed the tyrannical Dao slaughtering technique. Chapter 29:36. Activating the bloodline. Sauron was frustrated. This human cultivator hadn't even used his full strength in the head-on clash just now. Sauron roared again and again. The scales on his body became even redder. The blood-red spikes on his body transformed and grew in a large area. His aura skyrocketed again. This time, I've activated 2/3 of my bloodline. Let's see if you're still a match for me. Sauron roared in his heart. His attacks became even more ferocious, like a violent storm. Zhuon frowned slightly and felt the pressure. Sauron, who had activated 2/3 of his bloodline, was much stronger than before. This shocked him. Zhuon had no choice but to use the profound meaning sky blade. Zhuon formed a seal with both hands. Suddenly, a blazing white light appeared in his palms and finally manifested into 2 blazing light blades. As Zhuon's Pangu's sacred body became more and more perfect, his mastery of the profound meaning in the Panga banner also became more and more profound. Naturally, the power of the profound meaning also increased. In the past, he could only use his hand to form the sky blade. Now, he could directly manifest 2 light blades. The power was much stronger than before. Zhuon's hands danced. The 2 sky blade flashed with a dazzling white light in the void. It blocked all of Sauron's fierce attacks and even suppressed him. Sauron couldn't believe it. What was wrong with this human cultivator? He actually had such a powerful technique. Sauron was furious. He felt that he had activated 2/3 of his bloodline and still couldn't take down a human who was only at the cultivation level of the profound meaning master. This made him feel very embarrassed. He no longer held back and activated all the bloodline in his body. His body grew taller by more than 30 meters, and blood-red scales covered his entire body. A huge blood blade that was even taller than Sauron grew out of his back. This blood blade was very primitive. It didn't even have a handle. It looked very strange. Rip. Sauron tore off the blood blade that grew out of his back. Blood splattered, but Sauron didn't seem to be in any pain. His red eyes were fixed on Zhuon. Zhuon frowned. Zoro's aura was much stronger than when he had activated 2/3 of his power. It was as if he was facing an invincible beast. Human, it's been a long time since I, Sauron, fully unleashed my bloodline in battle. You're good, you've successfully unleashed my bloodline. Prepare to die. Zoro said coldly and disappeared without a trace. So fast, Zhuon's pupils shrank. He felt that Zoro's speed was much faster than before. He couldn't even catch Zoro's shadow. Bang! Zhuan only felt a gust of wind on his right cheek. He only had time to place the sky-splitting blade in his right hand across his right cheek. Immediately after, he heard the sound of metal clashing. Soon after, he let out a muffled groan and flew backwards. The sky-splitting blade in his right hand shattered into countless white stars. This blood saber is too terrifying. It actually shattered my sky-splitting blade upon contact. While Zhuan was flying backwards, this was the only thought in his mind. Zoro, who had fully activated his bloodline, was like a cheat. Whether it was strength, speed, or reaction, there was a world of difference compared to when 2/3 of his bloodline was activated. It was as if at this moment, Zoro's whole person had transformed. It was too terrifying. Bang! Another gust of wind swept over, directly blasting towards Zhuowen's face. Zhuan had no choice but to place the sky-splitting blade in his left hand in front of him. Immediately, a sharp pain came from his left hand. He was constantly flying backwards by a huge force, and the sky-splitting blade in his left hand shattered into pieces. Ha! Now you can't show off in front of me. That. Zoro saw that the sky-splitting blade in Zhuowen's hands had been shattered by his blood saber, and he sighed softly in his heart. Zhuan had shown his strength time and time again and fought to a draw with him. This was already unbelievable to him. Now that he had fully activated his bloodline, if he still couldn't crush this boy, he could eat shit. After all, on the surface, Zhuowen's cultivation was only that of the Lord of Xuanji. There was a big gap between their realms, and he was also a human cultivator. Fighting with him to this extent already made him feel extremely insulted. Now was the time for him to wash away his shame. Zoro held the back of the blood saber with both hands and fiercely slammed it toward Zhuan, who was still falling below. His whole body was falling rapidly, and with the help of his falling body, the power of the blood saber became even more terrifying and fierce. Zhuowen's expression was not very good. Looking at the blood saber that was falling forward, he could feel that the power of this blood saber was even more terrifying than before. Zhuowen put his palms together and quickly formed a complicated seal. Shortly after, his body emitted a sparkling and translucent light. This light was different from the light emitted when he released the Pangu's sacred body. It was more similar to the light reflected from the surface of unpolished jade. It was very pure. This time, Yun was using the mysterious light of creation from the Pangu banner. The mysterious light of creation was a defensive profundity among the 5 great profundities. Its defensive power was shocking. Boom! The blood saber fell in front of Zhuowen and was blocked by the mysterious light of creation. However, the power of the blood saber was indeed terrifying. The mysterious light of creation barely blocked it. Very complicated ripples appeared on the surface of the light, as if it would collapse at any time. Zoro's eyes were filled with shock. He found it unbelievable. He had used all his strength in this attack. Even an expert at the early stage of the Lord of Creation couldn't block it and would die under this saber. Even an expert at the middle stage of the Lord of Creation would probably be injured by this saber. However, the human cultivator in front of him, who had been suppressed by him just now, had actually blocked it. How did this guy do it? However, Zoro soon noticed the mysterious light of creation in front of Zhuan. He knew that this kid was able to block his saber because of the strange light energy covering the surface of this kid's body. Damn it, let's see how many sabers you can block. Zoro's eyes were cold. His hands danced violently, bringing with them terrifying and ear-piercing wind. Instantly, his blood saber blasted out continuously at an extremely fast speed, turning into streaks of blood shadows that were difficult to capture. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, the ripples on the surface of the mysterious light of creation became even denser. It was on the verge of collapse, as if it would shatter at any time. Zhuan kept retreating, his eyes becoming very serious. He formed a seal with both hands, and a destructive power condensed between his hands. He had used another profundity, the universal annihilation. The universal annihilation was the same as the sky-opening saber. Among the 5 great profundities of the Pangu banner, they were mainly offensive. However, the Universal Annihilation's attack contained destructive power, and its power was much more terrifying than the sky-opening saber. Chapter 2937. Reversal Crack. The mysterious light of creation was finally destroyed by Sauron. Sauron's eyes were bloodshot as he slashed his blood saber toward Zhuowen's face. It was as if he could see Zhuowen being completely blasted into a bloody mist under his blade. This made him want to laugh wildly in his heart. Rumble. Zhuowen's eyes were calm. After using Heaven and Earth Perish, he performed the tyrannical Dao slaughtering technique with both hands and punched the blood saber's edge. A terrifying explosion resounded, and soon after, a destructive force spread out. Sauron's eyes became dull. He realized that his huge blood saber's edge had actually deviated and slashed down from Zhuowen's side, hitting nothing but air. Only then did he realize that this human cultivator had actually blocked his blood saber with both hands and deflected it. How did this guy do it? Sauron was stunned. The power of his blood saber was very terrifying. Just now, Zhuowen was forced to retreat by his blood saber, but now, he actually blocked the blood saber and deflected it. This was really inconceivable. The moment Zhuowen deflected the blood saber, he kept retreating. His cheeks were red, and it was obvious that he had suffered serious internal injuries. Although Heaven and Earth Perish was very destructive, the power of Sauron's blood saber was too terrifying. Even the destructive force of Heaven and Earth Perish was slightly inferior to that of the blood saber. Bang! Bang! Sauron seemed to have gone crazy as he violently swung the blood saber in his hand, which turned into terrifying blood shadows and bombarded Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen's expression was not good. He could only passively endure Sauron's crazy attacks. The blood saber's attacks were too terrifying, and every time he blocked, his arms would become numb. Bang! A terrifying blood light exploded, and a figure flew out in a very sorry state. Not far away, Sapu, who had been watching from the ruins, looked carefully. After seeing the figure that flew out, he was so scared that his whole body trembled. The reason for that was because the figure that was sent flying was none other than Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen was in a very bad state. Both of his arms were covered in dense cracks as if they would collapse at any moment. Even his body was covered in dense cracks. Zhuowen's face was gloomy. It seemed that he had really underestimated Zorro. After fully activating his bloodline, Sauron's strength was most likely comparable to an early creation lord's. Using his clone's physical body to resist him was truly a bit of a stretch. Human cultivator, die! Zorro roared, swung his arms violently, and threw the huge blood blade in his hands directly at Zhuowen. In the distance, Sapu, after seeing the terrifying blood blade, his face immediately turned pale with fright. He knew that the human cultivator he had recognized as his master was finished. Sauron's attack was really too terrifying. Pucci. Sure enough, Sapu saw from afar that the human cultivator was slashed by the blood blade and was immediately torn into a cloud of blood mist. Not even a trace of him was left. As expected, he's finished. When Sapu saw the human cultivator's body turn into a cloud of blood mist, he fell to his knees with a thump. He could imagine how severe and terrifying Sauron's punishment for this traitor would be. Sauron laughed savagely, his eyes filled with satisfaction. This loathsome human cultivator had finally been killed by him, and the knot in his heart had finally been completely untied. Putting away the blood blade, Sauron's gaze landed on Sapu in the distant ruins, and a cruel smile tugged at his lips. Sensing Sauron's gaze, Sapu's legs went weak. He couldn't stand up, let alone get up and flee. Sapu, you really are a traitor. You actually betrayed me and recognized a human cultivator as your master. It seems that you don't care about this seed at all. Sauron slowly landed on the ruins, looked at the kneeling Sapu, and grinned. Sapu's hands were on the ground, and his entire body was trembling. He began to speak incoherently, so anxious that he was about to cry. Sapu, don't worry, I won't kill you. After all, you gave me this person's position. Although this person was the one who ordered you to do this, you still did something. However, you can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. I will bring you back to the Merfolk clan and throw you into the shark extermination pond for 10,000 years. After 10,000 years, if you can survive, you'll be free, and I won't punish you for your crimes." Sauron grinned, but Sapu's face was deathly pale. The shark extermination pond was a place within the Merfolk clan specially used to punish traitors. Once thrown in, death was certain. No Merfolk had ever lasted more than 100 years in the shark extermination pond. Now, Sauron actually wanted to throw him into the shark extermination pond for 10,000 years. This was no different from killing him. "Spare me, Lord Sauron." Sapu hurriedly begged for mercy. "If you're not willing to exterminate the shark extermination pond, then I can only exterminate you now. This is your choice," Sauron said with killing intent. Sapu's face stiffened, and he hurriedly denied it, expressing his willingness to exterminate the shark extermination pond. Sauron nodded and picked up Sapu. Just as he was about to leave, a terrifying killing intent suddenly locked onto him. All the hair on Sauron's body stood on end as he felt a terrifying threat of death. He growled and lifted Sapu in his hand, placing him in front of him. A blood-red light quickly streaked across the sky, bringing with it soaring killing intent as it quickly arrived in front of Sauron. The blood-red light directly rushed into Sapu's back, then pierced through his chest. Sapu screamed as his entire body was turned into countless blood foams by the blood-red light. The blood-red light was unstoppable as it continued to rush toward Sauron. Sauron roared angrily as he pulled out the blood-red saber again and quickly slashed at the blood-red light. Ding ding ding. Every slash produced countless sparks, which looked extremely dazzling and resplendent. Sauron kept retreating, and in the process, he saw the true appearance of the blood-red light. It was actually a blood-stained horn. Bang! After hundreds of slashes, Sauron's breathing became much more rapid, and the webbing between his thumb and forefinger was torn open, with extremely bright blood flowing out. What's going on? Sauron felt powerless, but that blood-stained horn was still unstoppable. It didn't seem to be declining at all. On the contrary, it was even more powerful and terrifying than before. At this moment, Sauron's real body, which was hiding in another ruin, slowly stood up and pulled out another arrow. This arrow was only an ordinary creation-level divine arrow, but it was enough. Under the power of Ho Yi's divine arrow, Sauron was completely suppressed. Besides, with the power of Ho Yi's divine arrow, Sauron would be completely injured or even killed within a few rounds. Zhuan naturally didn't want to waste too much time. The right thing to do was to get rid of Sauron as soon as possible. Sauron's real body pulled the bowstring to 1/3 of an arc, then released it. Instantly, the divine arrow shot out with a sky-piercing killing intent. After releasing the divine arrow, Sauron's real body let out a sigh as blood flowed out of his mouth. Chapter 2938. Ranking skyrocketed. My strength is still too weak. Zhuan shook his head. Although his original body did not have a Taoist root, he had broken through the taboo of the heavenly Tao and his combat strength was far superior to other cultivators of the same level. However, compared to the Pangu's sacred body of his doppelganger, it paled in comparison. If his original body used the Ho Yi divine bow, he could draw the bowstring to 2/3 of its full length. Together with the Ho Yi divine arrow, he could seriously injure or even kill Sauron. However, Zhuan was not discouraged. The Ho Yi divine arrow that he shot was enough to tire Sauron out. With this arrow, Sauron would definitely not be able to withstand it. The divine arrow was like a bolt of lightning. It turned into a bloody light and rushed towards Sauron with monstrous killing intent. The sharp tip of the arrow accurately pressed against the end of the blood-stained horn, emitting the sound of metal clashing. Boom! With the help of the divine arrow, the blood-stained horn exploded with a terrifying explosive sound. On the body of the arrow, an even more shocking killing intent burst forth. Sauron held the huge bloody saber in front of him. He barely blocked the blood-stained horn and was panting. But soon, his pupils shrank as he realized that the power of the blood-stained horn had changed qualitatively. The killing intent that burst out went straight to his bones and made him tremble. The blood-stained horn that was boosted by the arrow was too terrifying. The bloody saber could not even hold on for a second before it collapsed and shattered into countless bloody pieces. The blood-stained horn was like a hot knife through butter as it quickly drilled into Sauron's body. The scales that Sauron was so proud of could not withstand a single blow from the blood-stained horn. The violent killing intent turned into a physical destructive force that began to destroy the internal tissues of Sauron's body. Sauron screamed as his eyes widened in disbelief. He had a special bloodline and was known as a genius in the Merman clan. He was also one of the best among the younger generation of the 10 great clans. He had unlimited talent and a bright future. However, he never expected that this time, he had come to the dark ancient city with great ambition. He wanted to achieve something, but he did not expect that he would be destroyed by an unknown human rogue cultivator. If it was a top genius of the human race like Zhongli Haoyan or Yi Qidong, he would not be so unwilling. However, he had never heard of this human cultivator before him. He was just a wandering cultivator who did not have a fixed residence. Human, who are you? What's your name? Sauron could feel that the tissues in his body under the killing intent of the blood-stained horn, Sauron's. He knew that he could not hold on for long. He wanted to know the name of the person who killed him before he died. The loser person. Juwins with a calm as. Sauron. Sauron roared at the sky, "You are going too far. Don't think that no one will know just because you killed my merfolk clansmen. Today I will use my lifeblood to set up a curse. After I die, you will be the enemy of my entire merfolk race. The entire merfolk race will not let you go." After Sauron finished speaking, his body could not withstand the violent power of the blood-stained horn. He spat out a mouthful of blood and exploded into a bloody mist. Zhuan shot out another divine arrow, which landed in the bloody mist. There was a golden light in the bloody mist that was hit by the divine arrow. It let out a shrill cry before completely dispersing. Soul wants to escape? Wishful thinking. Zhuan sneered. He knew that Sauron had a backup plan after his body was dispersing, so he was prepared. He discovered that Sauron's soul wanted to escape. However, after completely destroying Sauron's soul, Zhuan frowned slightly. He discovered that in that instant, the traces of his fate seemed to have changed. It was as if a stain had been added to his fate. Although it wasn't obvious, Zhuan was keenly aware of it. If it was in the past, Zhuan naturally would not be able to detect his fate, let alone a stain in his fate. However, ever since he practiced the divine divination secret, he had grasped a trace of the art of fate and was sensitive to his own fate. Could it be because of Sauron? Zhuan frowned. He could not help but think of Sauron's curse before he died. Could it be that the change in his fate was because of Sauron's curse? However, after using the divine divination technique, Zhuan discovered that the additional stain on the traces of fate did not affect his physical condition or cultivation at all. It was like an inconspicuous stain on his clothes. It was not easy to detect and did not affect his clothes. Since it didn't have much effect on him, Zhuan didn't care too much about it. After putting away Zorro's spirit ring, he released the Starry Sky token and was surprised to find that his Starry Sky token had suddenly increased by 10,000 points. He now had more than 20,000 points on his universal token. In other words, Sauron alone had contributed 10,000 points to him. It seemed like Sauron was indeed much stronger than Li Yang. Otherwise, his points would not be double of Li Yang's. On the other hand, Zhuowen's ranking had also increased by more than 30 places from 70. Now he was ranked 35th. Due to the incident in the Dark Ancient City, the number of cultivators in the space camp had decreased significantly. However, the Universal Tower was the core of the space camp. It was also the place where the universal tokens were distributed. Hence, there were still many cultivators here. As the cultivators entered and exited the Universal Tower, they would inevitably pass by the Universal Plaza. When they passed by the Universal Plaza, they would naturally take a few glances at the huge stone tablet in the middle of the plaza. This stone tablet was naturally the universal contribution ranking. At this moment, There were many cultivators gathered in front of the universal contribution ranking. They were all staring at the ranking in front of them in shock. On the ranking, the top 30 names did not change much. Everyone was already used to it. Their eyes were not on the top 30 names of the universal contribution ranking. Instead, they were focused on the 35th name. This name was very unfamiliar to them. A few days ago, this name did not even appear on the universal contribution ranking. However, today, this name had suddenly risen to 35th place. Where did this dragon text come from? Why did it suddenly jump to 35th place? Which sect's disciple is he from? In front of the ranking, many cultivators who had doubts in their hearts asked the question in their hearts. I have seen this dragon text before. I remember that a few hours ago, this dragon text was only in the 70s. Why did it suddenly double and enter 35th place? An old man spoke. His voice was filled with vicissitudes and shock. Chapter 29:39. Zhong Li Hao Yen, are you making this up? A few hours ago, he was only in the 70s. In just a few hours, you mean that this kid has accumulated 10,000 points? Accumulating 10,000 points in a few hours, this is not possible, right? Normally, when a cultivator kills a foreign race of the same level, they can only accumulate 20 points. According to this calculation, this kid killed 500 foreign race of the same level in a few hours? Not possible? Not to mention that foreign race of the same level are stronger than us human cultivators. It is very difficult for human cultivators to kill foreign race of the same level, unless it is a prodigy like Zhong Li Hao Yen or Yi Qidong. Now that the human race and the foreign race are not in a war, it is very difficult to find 500 foreign race of the same level in a few hours. Everyone discussed animatedly, feeling that they could not figure out how this long one was able to obtain 10,000 points in such a short period of time. This kid should have killed a foreign race expert of a much higher level than him. Otherwise, he would not be able to obtain 10,000 points in such a short period of time. Suddenly, a slightly cold voice came from behind the ranking board. Everyone followed the voice and saw a slender and elegant young woman slowly walking over. This woman looked to be about 27 or 28 years old. Her figure was well proportioned, especially her pair of slender jade legs, which were very eye-catching. However, this tall beauty had a very cold temperament. Even the tone of her voice was cold, without the slightest bit of emotion. In front of the ranking board, when everyone saw this tall beauty, their eyes were filled with reverence, and they all automatically opened a path for this beauty. Behind the tall beauty followed an old man. This old man's face was full of age spots, and a very serious aura of death lingered around him. However, the old man's eyes were as sharp as an eagle's, emitting a bright light that could not be looked at directly. Especially the aura that was faintly revealed from the old man's body. It was more vast than the sea, more majestic than the mountains, giving people an unapproachable feeling. This old man was definitely a very terrifying expert. I didn't expect it to be Zhong Li Hao Yen. Didn't they say that she entered the dark ancient city to look for ancestral shaman Gonggong? Why did she turn back to the space camp? Many people were discussing in low voices when they saw the cold woman walking over. It was obvious that they were puzzled by Hao Yan's appearance here. Zhong Li Hao Yen paid no attention to the astonishment of everyone and directly arrived before the rankings, and her beautiful eyes stared at the name, Long One, at the 35th position as her eyes narrowed. To be honest, a mere rank 35 on the Universal Contribution Board was nothing in her eyes. What she was surprised about was that this Long One was able to instantly obtain 10,000 points. She knew very well that if she wanted to obtain so many points in an instant, she would have to cross at least 2 major realms and destroy a foreign race that was much stronger than her. Back then, she had once crossed 2 major realms and killed a foreign race expert with great difficulty. However, she had only obtained 10,000 points, and this was her most glorious achievement in history. But that was when her cultivation was only at the first step of Dao validation. Originally, she thought that it was unlikely that there would be a prodigy who could kill a foreign race that was 2 realms higher than him. She didn't expect that she would be lucky enough to see it today. Young miss, This old man doesn't believe that there would be a human cultivator who could cross two realms and kill a foreign race cultivator just by relying on his own strength. The old man behind Zhongli Hao Yen narrowed his eyes and glanced at the Long Wen name indifferently as he spoke in a neither fast nor slow manner. Even if this person relied on a powerful external object, it's still extraordinary. After all, a powerful external object requires sufficient strength to control it. Zhongli Hao Yen narrowed her beautiful eyes and said indifferently. The old man nodded and didn't refute. Zhongli Hao Yan's point of view wasn't wrong. All right, let's go to the Universal Tower to exchange for things first. It's very dangerous to enter the dark ancient city this time. Now that the Alliance is trapped in front of the Door of Darkness, it will take a lot of time to break through the Door of Darkness. I need to use this time to exchange for powerful artifacts in the Universal Tower to deal with the huge dangers that may appear in the dark ancient city this time. Zhongli Hao Yen was very decisive and didn't hesitate at all. After she finished speaking, she left the Universal Contribution Board with the old man and entered the Universal Tower. Although she was curious about Long Wen's sudden increase of 10,000 points, she didn't care too much about it. Zhongli Hao Yen was very confident in her own strength. She was now standing at the peak of the younger generation in the entire Xianmi heavenly domain and was fully deserving of the title of number 1. In her opinion, Long Wen's cultivation should only be in the first step of the Tao confirming realm. Perhaps he was only the heavenly Tao master. Perhaps he was lucky enough to kill an expert at the level of Lord Hunyuan, which was why he obtained such high points. Although she was somewhat interested in such a talent, she didn't particularly care. After all, her cultivation had already entered the third step of the Tao confirming realm, and her battle strength was far higher than her cultivation. A mere heavenly Tao master, no matter how much of a genius he was just a small figure not worth mentioning to her. Unless Long Wen was also in the third step of the Tao confirming realm and obtained 10,000 points, Zhongli Hao Yen was afraid that she would really pay attention to him and even view him as a great enemy. However, Zhongli Hao Yen knew that this was basically impossible. When one was in the first step of the Tao confirming realm, it was still possible to kill a foreign race 2 realms higher. However, when one's cultivation reached the third step, wanting to kill a foreign race 2 realms higher was simply wishful thinking. Take Zhongli Hao Yen for example. She could already be considered the most monstrous junior in the Xianmi heavenly domain. Her cultivation was now at the mid-stage of the Lord of Creation realm, and her battle strength was comparable to that of the Lord of Creation. But if he wanted to kill an alien of the Lord of Creation's level, then he was dreaming. However, when Zhongli Hao Yen was in the first step of the Tao confirming realm, she frequently killed foreign races. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to accumulate so many points and become the fully deserving number 1 on the Universal Contribution ranking. If Zhongli Hao Yen knew that Zhuan had used the Lord of Mystery to kill the peak Lord of Creation of the Merfolk race, Sauron, she probably wouldn't be so calm. Sauron had a special bloodline and had a very high status in the Merfolk race. He was also a well-known prodigy of the primitive heavenly domain. Although Zhongli Hao Yen was conceited, she was still lacking in strength to kill Sauron even though she could defeat him. As the main character of this small incident, Zhuan didn't know that his specific ranking would attract the attention of many people. After his clone gradually formed a complete physical body, his gaze suddenly turned cold as he looked at a pile of rubble in the southeast corner. "You've been there for quite a while. Why haven't you come out yet?" Zhuan's voice was very cold and emotionless. In fact, during his battle with Sauron, his divine sense had inadvertently scanned this pile of rubble and discovered that there were still cultivators' auras hidden in this pile of rubble. Although the aura was very weak, Zhuan's divine sense was extraordinary. Even if it was just a trace of aura, he could acutely sense it. Indeed, not long after Zhuan's reprimand, 3 people slowly walked out of the rubble. They were 2 women and a man. After the 3 of them walked out, Zhuan's gaze instantly landed on the woman standing at the back. This woman was very beautiful and was very rare. She was simply a femme fatale. Chapter 2940. An old friend. I didn't expect to meet Miss Yao in the dark ancient city. Huan nodded to himself. This beautiful woman was Zhuowen's old friend, Yao Xiangjuan. When Yao Xiangjuan was in the 8 heavenly regions, she had been selected by a powerful force and brought directly to the Xianmi heavenly region. After that, Yuan had entered the Xianmi heavenly region. He had thought that he would be able to find out about Yao Xiangjuan, but he had not found any news about her in the host region. At that time, he had guessed that the force that Yao Xiangjuan had joined was not in the host region, but in another precept region. Yao Xiangjuan noticed that Zhun was staring at her. She frowned slightly and was unhappy. She had witnessed the battle between this person and Sauron, the Merman clan's genius, and had even killed Sauron. She had been very shocked and had thought that this person was someone important. Now that he was acting like a pig when he saw her, Yao Xiangjuan despised him. The reverence that had arisen spontaneously earlier had completely vanished. Among the 3 of them, the leader was a young man with a refined temperament. This young man was dressed in green and had a very strong scholarly temperament. He had also noticed that Zhuan had been staring at Yao Xiangjuan. Although he was unhappy, he did not show it on his face. I am Xing Xinglan, a disciple of the Heaven and Earth Divine Sect in the South Dao region. These 2 are my junior sisters. Just now, we saw that you were powerful and could actually kill Li Yang and the other Merman clan experts. So, we wanted to make friends, so... Xing Xinglan chuckled. Before he could finish, Zhuan coldly interrupted him. So, you followed me? Xing Xinglan was slightly embarrassed and angry. He had already revealed his identity, but this person's attitude was still so unyielding. Although the Heaven and Earth Divine Sect was not the strongest force in the South Dao region, it was still a Dao Palace level force. Among the many forces in the South Dao region, it could be ranked in the top 3. Ordinary cultivators would be very polite when they heard about the Heaven and Earth Divine Sect. They would not react so calmly like Zhuan. Could it be that this person was not afraid of the Heaven and Earth Divine Sect at all? It's not stalking. I just want to make friends with him. Xing Xinglan felt somewhat sullen, but he did not dare to get angry. After all, although the person before him was only a loose cultivator, his strength was very abnormal. Little did he know that even Sauron had been killed by this person. Zhuan nodded. He didn't really care about Xing Xinglan. Xing Xinglan's cultivation was at the Eternal Overlord realm. Among the younger generation, he could be considered a genius. However, to Zhuan, this level of cultivation was simply trash. He could destroy him with a flip of his hand. He wasn't afraid of Xing Xinglan playing any tricks. By the way, what level of power is the Heaven and Earth Divine Sect in the Southern Dao region? Suddenly, Zhuan asked. This was indeed the first time he had heard of the Heaven and Earth Divine Sect. After all, he had spent most of his time in the host domain and was very familiar with the host domain. As for the other precept domains, he was a complete novice. Xing Xinglan's expression froze. Yao Xiangjuan and the other female cultivator were also speechless. It turned out that this guy in front of them didn't even know about the Heaven and Earth Divine Sect. No wonder he was so calm after Xing Xinglan revealed his identity as a disciple of the Heaven and Earth Divine Sect. Xing Xinglan was depressed. The Heaven and Earth Divine Sect was a Dao Palace level power in the Southern Dao region. Even if this person was not a cultivator of the Southern Dao region, he should have known about the Heaven and Earth Divine Sect. How could he not know anything about it? What he said just now was for naught. Ahem. My friend, the Heaven and Earth Divine Sect is one of the Dao Palace level powers in the Southern Dao region. It's one of the top powers in the Southern Dao region. Xing Xinglan said with a smug look in his eyes. He felt that after this person knew that the Heaven and Earth Divine Sect was a Dao Palace level power, he would definitely show a look of reverence. When the time came, his attitude towards him would definitely change very quickly. Oh, so it's a Dao Palace level power in the Southern Dao region. Zhuan nodded calmly, as if he had just heard of an ordinary power. It was not Zhuan's fault. After all, he had broken into a Dao Palace level power like the 10 Ultimate Een Corps sect and destroyed a country. He had even been wanted by the 10 Ultimate Een Corps sect disciples and geniuses like the Ghost Plume. In Zhuan's eyes, a Dao Palace level power was not that unreachable. This was also the reason why he appeared so calm. Xing Xinglan was going crazy. Was this guy a freak? He did not show any reverence for a Dao Palace level power. This was a Dao Palace level power, not an ordinary power. Could he please show some reaction? Yao Xiangjuan and the female cultivator were even more surprised. Zhuan's reaction was a little too calm. Putting on an act, Yao Xiangjuan snorted coldly in her heart. She did not have a good impression of Zhuan at all. The current Zhuan had changed his appearance and was not his original appearance. Therefore, Yao Xiangjuan did not recognize Zhuan and only treated him as an annoying stranger. Alright, my name is Long Wen. Now that you know me, if there's nothing else, you can leave this place. Zhuan waved his hand impatiently. The female cultivator beside Yao Xiangjuan was furious and wanted to scold him, but she was stopped by Xing Xinglan. Xing Xinglan smiled and said, "So it's Brother Long. Actually, we came with you this time not only to get to know you, but also to invite you into the depths of the dark ancient city." The depths of the dark ancient city? Aren't the experts of your Yin and Yang divine sect in the depths? Why are you inviting me to go in with you? Isn't it unnecessary? Zhuan asked in surprise. Xing Xinglan said calmly, "Our Yin and Yang divine sect has indeed entered the depths of the dark ancient city. In addition to our sect, there are representatives of other Dao Palace forces and experts of foreign races. We have formed a temporary alliance. However, the alliance is now blocked in front of the dark ancient city's dark portal. There is a sky-level formation in the dark portal. Even if all the experts of the alliance join forces to attack it, it will be useless." There's a sky-level formation? Zhuan was surprised. If it was really a sky-level formation, it was indeed not something that ordinary experts could break. Moreover, there must be an early-stage sky-level master like Senki Yin in the temporary alliance. However, they could not break it open even if they joined forces. This sky-level formation was definitely not an ordinary one. If there is a sky-level formation in the way that even the experts of your sect can't do anything about, then isn't it unnecessary for you to ask me to accompany you? Zhuan was speechless. Brother Long, you may not know this. The sky-level formation only restricts experts of the creator level and above. In other words, anyone below the creator level can enter. Brother Long, you were able to kill Sauron. Your strength has already surpassed ordinary creator levels. If you help us, entering the dark portal will be like adding wings to a tiger. Of course, I guarantee that I can help you suppress the matter of you killing Sauron. With the strength of our Yin and Yang divine sect, we really don't need to fear the merfolk. Xing Xinglan's eyes were full of confidence. You mean that if I join you, you will help me suppress the matter of Sauron? If I don't, you will betray me? Chapter 2941. Cooperation Boom. The terrifying killing intent seemed to have materialized as it exploded, setting off a strong storm in the surroundings. Xing Xinglan, Yao Xiangjuan, and Wen Yadong's expressions all changed. Their faces were extremely pale as their bodies trembled. The most miserable one was none other than Xing Xinglan. As Zhuowen's killing intent was targeted at Xing Xinglan was currently enduring unbearable pain and pressure. Xing Xinglan's forehead was covered in cold sweat as he looked at the young man in front of him in fear. He involuntarily knelt down with a plop. Brother Long, you've misunderstood. I didn't mean to threaten you. I said the wrong thing just now. Xing Xinglan said while trembling. Zhuowen's lips were filled with a cold smile. He completely ignored Xing Xinglan's pleas for mercy as the killing intent in his eyes became more and more terrifying. Xing Xinglan's heart skipped a beat as he felt the threat of death. He was extremely regretful. He shouldn't have taken advantage of the fact that he was a disciple of the Heaven and Earth Divine Sect to shoot at the young man in front of him. One had to know that the young man in front of him had even killed the mermaid genius Sauron without hesitation. Although his status in the Heaven and Earth Divine Sect was not low, he was only an ordinary genius. Compared to Sauron, the difference was like heaven and earth. It would be extremely easy for this person to kill him. Xing Xinglan was an idiot. He actually dared to threaten such a terrifying person with words. Was he tired of living? Yao Xiangjuan and Wen Yadong were standing far away, and Zhuowen's killing intent was not targeted at them. Therefore, although they felt a chill in their hearts, they were not suppressed to the point that they could only kneel down like Xing Xinglan. However, the two female cultivators were clearly frightened. They stood on the spot and were at a loss of what to do. However, Yao Xiangjuan quickly came back to her senses. Her beautiful eyes were filled with determination as she walked toward Zhuan. Although she was slow, her steps were very firm. Zhuan was a little surprised as he looked at Yao Xiangjuan, who was walking towards him. Yao Xiangjuan stopped 10 meters away from Zhuan. She took a deep breath and stared at Zhuan with her beautiful eyes. Her delicate body was trembling, but her gaze was stubborn and resolute. Senior, although Senior Brother Xing's words just now were inappropriate, he doesn't deserve death. Junior sister, I apologize for Senior Brother Xing's rash actions just now. I beg Senior to let him off, Yao Xiangjuan said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. When Xing Xinglan saw that Yao Xiangjuan was pleading for him, he placed his hands on the ground and did not dare to speak carelessly. Right now, his mind was filled with the fear of death. Zhuowen looked at Yao Xiangjuan with interest and couldn't help but nod inwardly. He had to admit that Yao Xiangjuan's personality hadn't changed even after so many years. She was still as tenacious and unyielding as before. Are you not afraid of death? Zhuowen asked. I'm afraid. However, what I'm more afraid of is that I don't dare to stand up for my fellow apprentices when they're in trouble, causing them to die, Yao Xiangjuan said indifferently. Junior sister Yao, shut up. No one will take you to be a mute if you don't speak. Suddenly, Xing Xinglan turned around, and his eyes were crimson red as he roared at Yao Xiangjuan like a furious lion. Yao Xiangjuan was stunned. She didn't expect that Xing Xinglan would actually shout at her with such a hostile tone. This caused her to feel slightly wronged in her heart, and she was stunned on the spot, unable to say a single word. She originally thought that her actions would obtain Xing Xinglan's approval, yet she didn't expect that Xing Xinglan actually didn't appreciate her actions in the slightest and even vented his resentment on her. After berating Yao Xiangjuan, Xing Xinglan turned around to look at Zhuowen and revealed a flattering smile as he said, Senior, I was rude earlier. Now, Xing Xinglan only begs Senior to let me off. Even if Senior wants me to be your dog, it's fine as well. Yao Xiangjuan looked at Xing Xinglan, who was wagging his tail and begging for pity before Zhuowen in disbelief. Was this still the cultured and refined Senior Brother Xing that she admired in the past? In Yao Xiangjuan's impression, Senior Brother Xing should be neither servile nor overbearing, calm and unhurried, and unyielding to abuse. But now, Xing Xinglan's actions had clearly taken her by surprise. Zhuowen slowly withdrew his killing intent and glanced indifferently at Xing Xinglan. After the latter felt the killing intent on his body withdraw, he finally heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. But his lowered head and his eyes flickered with resentment. This young man before him made him bow and scrape in front of his two junior sisters and suffer humiliation. He would remember this grudge in his heart. Go and apologize to this Miss Yao. After you apologize, I won't pursue your earlier mistake. Zhuowen pointed at Yao Xiangjuan as he spoke to Xing Xinglan. Xing Xinglan hurriedly nodded, but on second thought he was immediately stunned. He asked Zhuowen instead, Senior wants me to apologize to junior sister Yao? You want to know why? Zhuowen's gaze became sharp as he stared straight at Xing Xinglan. Xing Xinglan's scalp went numb, and he didn't dare to say anything else. He hurriedly bowed deeply towards Yao Xiangjuan and said, Junior sister Yao, I was wrong just now. I shouldn't have reprimanded you. It's Senior Brother's fault. Please forgive Senior Brother. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes looked at the apologetic Xing Xinglan with a complicated expression. She waved her hand and said somewhat dispiritedly, Senior Brother, there's no need to apologize. What you did just now wasn't wrong. I was impulsive and did something unnecessary. Xing Xinglan's gaze darkened. He knew that Yao Xiangjuan was thoroughly disappointed in him, and his expression didn't look too good, but he didn't show it. He knew that his excessive behavior just now had completely changed Yao Xiangjuan's view of him. This made him a little angry, and his resentment towards Zhuowen deepened. If it weren't for Zhuowen, He wouldn't have behaved so unbearably in front of his two junior sisters. Especially Yao Xiangjuan. She was really too beautiful, and the other female cultivators in the sect were overshadowed when compared to her. In order to pursue Yao Xiangjuan, Xing Xinglan had spent too much effort and even painstakingly displayed his positive image in front of Yao Xiangjuan, causing her to have a good impression of him. But now, because of Zhuan, his image in Yao Xiangjuan's eyes had completely collapsed. He knew that the possibility of recovering Yao Xiangjuan's good impression of him was very small. However, he didn't dare to do anything to Zhuan now. After all, the young man in front of him was too strange. His strength was too terrifying, and he was no match for him at all. After Yao Xiangjuan finished speaking, she no longer paid attention to Xing Xinglan. She only cupped her fists toward Zhuan and returned to the side of the female cultivator, preparing to leave this place. By the way, Miss Yao, would I, Long One, have the honor of going to the depths of the dark ancient city with you? If possible, I'm prepared to enter the door of darkness with the people of your Yin and Yang divine sect. Zhuan suddenly called out to Yao Xiangjuan and spoke his thoughts. Senior, do you plan to cooperate with us? Yao Xiangjuan looked at Zhuan with some astonishment. Obviously, she didn't expect that this senior, who didn't give any face to Xing Xinglan, would take the initiative to propose cooperation with their Yin and Yang divine sect. Yes, don't you welcome me? Zhuan said with a faint smile. Chapter 2942. Door of Darkness. Although Yao Xiangjuan could faintly feel that this young man's attitude towards her was very different, his strength was not to be underestimated. If this person joined, the chances of their Yin and Yang divine sect entering the door of darkness to obtain treasures would greatly increase. On the other hand, Xing Xinglan was very displeased by Zhuan's unusual attitude towards Yao Xiangjuan, but he did not dare to show it on his face. Since that's the case, I'll go with you to the door of darkness, Zhuan said. Yao Xiangjuan was naturally wild with joy, and Xing Xinglan and Wen Yadong naturally did not dare to object. After making this decision, Zhuan successfully joined the team, and Xing Xinglan, as the leader, brought the three of them towards the door of darkness in the depths of the ancient city of darkness. In one of the camps of the door of darkness, 7 or 8 mermen covered in scales knelt on one knee in front of an old merman, trembling. The old merman was the leader of the team sent out by the merman this time, MD. At this moment, MDA's expression was very ugly. He looked coldly at the 7 or 8 mermen kneeling in front of him and said in a low voice, "You said that Sauron left alone to seek revenge after learning that Li Yang was killed? Why didn't you stop them?" Elder MD, Sir Sauron is very stubborn, and we don't dare to disobey his orders. We have already suggested that we follow him, but Sir Sauron said there was no need, so... A merman trembled as he spoke. MD kicked this merman to the ground and threw out a shattered jade slip. He said in exasperation, "Sauron's life jade slip shattered just now." What? The 7 or 8 mermen kneeling on the ground turned ghastly pale as they stared blankly at the shattered jade slip on the ground. They knew very well what this shattered jade slip meant. Sauron had already fallen. But how was this possible? Sauron was one of the top geniuses of the merman race, and his battle strength ranked in the top 3 among the younger generation of the merman race. Moreover, he had a special bloodline and enjoyed great prestige among the 10 major races. Even human masters of creation would find it difficult to kill such a genius unless they were at the pinnacle of the master of creation realm or above. However, in the dark ancient city, such experts were basically the strongest of the major forces. They were basically gathered in front of the door of darkness, so how could they appear in the periphery of the dark ancient city? I only went to the Phoenix people to pay a visit to the Saintess. How could something like this happen? How should I punish you? Sauron's position in the clan is not ordinary, but he died here. When the clan leader asks about it, even I might be punished. You all deserve to die. The old merman was exasperated. The kneeling mermen all became silent, having nothing to say. They knew that they were finished. Elder MD, what should we do now? The merman asked carefully. There's a heaven-span grand formation inside the door of darkness. Any cultivator above the Lord of Creation realm is basically unable to enter. Only those below the Lord of Creation realm are qualified to enter. Originally, with Sauron's strength, he could enter the door of darkness and find the body of ancestor sorcerer Gongung. He would definitely be able to obtain a lot of ancestor sorcerer blood essence. However, all of this is ruined now. When we return to the Merman tribe, all of you will enter the Merman lake to receive your punishment. MDA's tone was cold and merciless. The 7 or 8 mermen kneeling on the ground turned pale and their bodies went limp. Entering the Merman lake meant certain death. It looked like they were dead meat. Along the way, Zhuan learned a lot about the major forces of the alliance in front of the door of darkness from Xing Xinglan and the other two. 80% of the Dao Palace forces in the Xianmi heavenly domain had basically come. Among them, the 5 Dao Palace forces of the host region had all sent their experts. Among the 10 major foreign races, 7 of them had sent their experts. The mermen were one of them. However, the team sent by the foreign races was not very strong. Even the leader was only a master of creation. However, the foreign races had unique talents and powerful physical bodies. Their strength was originally stronger than human cultivators. Although they had only sent a master of creation as the leaders of the Dao Palace forces in the Xianmi heavenly domain did not dare to casually touch them. After all, once they did, it would be very troublesome. It would escalate from a personal conflict to a conflict between forces. What shocked Zhuan the most was that the Phoenix people of the 10 major races had also come. It was said that even the Phoenix people's saintess had followed the team sent by the Phoenix people this time. She wanted to obtain the ancestor sorcerer Gongong's blood essence to evolve her own bloodline. Zhuowen's breathing quickened. He was very excited. When Mu Chenxue had awakened the 9-9 Phoenix body, she had been brought back to the primitive heavenly domain by the Phoenix people's experts. With Mu Chenxue's terrifying bloodline, Zhuowen knew that she would definitely become the Phoenix people's saintess. In other words, Mu Chenxue should have come to the dark ancient city as the Phoenix people's saintess. Thinking that he would be able to see Mu Chenxue soon, Zhuan was very excited. He had been separated from Mu Chenxue for many years. It was said that absence made the heart grow fonder. This time, they had been separated for a long time. When Zhuan was wandering alone, he would often think of Mu Chenxue. If not for the fact that Zhuowen's strength was too weak, he would have already traveled from the Xianmi heavenly domain to the primitive heavenly domain to the Phoenix people to find Mu Chenxue. Now that he was able to meet Mu Chenxue in the dark ancient city, it was a pleasant surprise. Yao Xiangjuan found that when she mentioned the Phoenix people's saintess, this senior Long Wen's eyes shone with an inexplicable emotion. She secretly guessed that this person might know the Phoenix people's saintess. However, she quickly discarded this idea. The Phoenix people were a large clan in the primitive heavenly domain. Moreover, the primitive heavenly domain and the Xianmi heavenly domain were like fire and water. When human cultivators entered the primitive heavenly domain, they would be surrounded and killed by many foreign races. It was basically impossible for them to survive. Conversely, foreign races entering the Xianmi heavenly domain also faced the same fate. She didn't believe that this long one in front of her would have the opportunity to know the Phoenix people's saintess. About half a day later, under the guidance of Xing Xinglan, the group of 4 arrived at an incomparably huge open space. This open space was surrounded by a hazy black qi. At the front of the open space, an incomparably huge black stone door stood quietly, connecting the heavens and the earth. This stone door was tens of thousands of feet high, piercing through the clouds. It was so majestic that it was difficult to see the top. The surface of the stone door glowed with a sparkling and translucent luster, as if it was forged from black jade. Zhuan looked from afar, but he could clearly feel that this stone door was emitting an ancient and vicissitude aura. This is the door of darkness? Zhuan pointed at the huge door in the distance that was faintly discernible in the black qi. Yes, we are very close to the door of darkness. The dangers near the door of darkness have all been dealt with by the Alliance. The surroundings are very safe, Yao Xiangjuan replied. In another 6 hours, we will be able to reach the Alliance's encampment, Xing Xinglan interrupted. Chapter 2943. Triple kill. Yao Xiangjuan cried out in surprise at Zhuowen's sudden action. She struggled with all her might and was furious. The young man in front of her was actually so impudent. Let go of me. Don't think that you can do whatever you want to me just because you're stronger than me. Yao Xiangjuan glared at him. The energy in her body surged as she tried to break free from Zhuowen's embrace. Zhuowen grunted. He didn't expect Yao Xiangjuan to suddenly explode with power to attack him. He was caught off guard and was hit squarely. His face paled slightly as blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Yao Xiangjuan was stunned. She didn't expect the young man in front of her to be so unguarded against her. She knew very well that with this person's strength, if he really used violence to imprison her, it would be a piece of cake. However, he didn't do that. Soon, Yao Xiangjuan knew why the young man suddenly hugged her and quickly retreated. It was because dozens of blood-red sword rays had suddenly appeared where she was just now. Each ray carried a murderous aura. With her strength, it was extremely difficult for her to block even one of them. If she was hit by these dozens of blood-red sword rays, she would definitely die. Ah! While Yao Xiangjuan was stunned, a scream broke her out of her daze. Dozens of blood-red sword rays had also appeared in the void around Wen Yadong, who was not far away. The pitiful Wen Yadong only had time to scream once before she was shattered by the blood-red sword rays. She had completely died. Junior sister Wen. Yao Xiangjuan looked at Wen Yadong's miserable fate and couldn't bear to see it. Xing Xinglan's situation was similar to Wen Yadong's. However, Xing Xinglan's cultivation was the highest among the three of them. He took out a blue seal divine weapon and barely blocked the blood-red sword rays that had suddenly appeared in the void. However, Xing Xinglan's situation was very bad. He kept coughing up blood and the light on the surface of the blue seal became dimmer. It was obvious that he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Brother Long, save me. Xing Xinglan spat out a mouthful of blood. He felt his body weakening and was shocked. He hurriedly asked Zhuowen for help. Zhuowen stomped his right foot, and a terrifying air wave erupted in the void. He appeared beside Xing Xinglan as if he had teleported. He lifted him up and put him into the great world. Although there were a lot of Zhuowen's secrets in the outside world, with Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxie guarding it, as well as the Thunderfire Sword, Blood Immortal Sword, and Sacrificial Death Sword, Wen was not afraid of Xing Xinglan messing around. Senior, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you just now. Are you alright? Yao Xiangjuan knew that just now Zhuowen was trying to save her, but she actually injured him without knowing why. This was clearly repaying kindness with enmity, and she felt very ashamed in her heart. Don't worry, it's just a minor injury. Enter my great world first. When it's safe, I'll let you out. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he kept Yao Xiangjuan into his macro world. Bang bang bang. While Zhuowen and Yao Xiangjuan were talking, dozens of attacks swept over from the void and blasted toward Zhuowen. Because Yun was delayed, he did not have time to dodge and could only choose to take them head-on. Zhuowen's body emitted a sparkling light. His 5 fingers clenched into a fist, and he suddenly blasted it into the void, colliding head-on with the dozens of blood-colored sword lights that swept over. Zhuowen's fist strength was so terrifying that it blasted the dozens of blood-colored sword lights into powder in one fell swoop. It immediately blasted into the interior of the void, transcending time and space. But he soon found that the attacker in the void began to flee the moment he blasted out the attack. His punch had no effect. Want to escape? Do you think it's that easy? Zhuowen snorted coldly. He stomped his right foot and completely entered the void. Although he did not see the attacker's face clearly, he had already guessed that it should be the Blood Prison assassins who launched the surprise attack just now. And it was not just one, but many of them, all of whom were masters. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. The Blood Prison assassins had provoked him again and again, making him really angry. This time, he must kill the Blood Prison assassins to the point where even the Blood Prison assassins would feel heartache. Chasing all the way, he soon came to a very unstable dark space in the depths of the void. There were no stars in this space, nor any light source, and even the heavenly Tao laws were somewhat incomplete. The moment Zhuowen entered this space, Zhuowen's face changed slightly. He felt a powerful spirit array aura inside. Obviously, the blood prison assassins just now were trying to lure him in. The real killing move was inside. Zhuowen retreated quickly, but soon found that a very violent energy was blasting toward him. This energy made Zhuowen's face change. It was extraordinarily powerful. Bang! Zhuowen punched out. With a rumble, he felt a powerful force coming from his fist, and he involuntarily took a few steps back. As for the owner of the attack, he let out a muffled groan and retreated more than 10 steps, looking at Zhuowen in shock. Only then did Zhuowen see the attacker's face clearly. It was a middle-aged man with a square face, wearing a very loose blood-red robe. Yun also noticed the word 3 on the middle-aged man's sleeve. He knew that this should be the blood prison assassin. Assassin's strength was not bad, and he was stronger than assassin. He should be a half-step lord of creation. Assassin's eyes were full of shock. He looked at the young man in front of him in disbelief. He had actually been at a disadvantage in the exchange just now. No matter how he looked at this guy, his aura was only that of the profound theory lord. How could he be so powerful? How did he do it? Assassin's eyes were solemn, and killing intent surged in his heart. He finally knew why assassin and assassin had been defeated by this kid. When he thought of this kid's terrifying strength, assassin knew that he had to get rid of him this time. Otherwise, the blood prison would have endless troubles coming one after another. After all, this kid was only the profound theory lord, and he already had such strength. If he was given enough time to advance to the eternal overlord realm, or even step into the third step of Tao confirming, no one in the blood prison would be able to stop him. At that time, the blood prison would most likely be destroyed. Traceless blood set up the blood-splashing limitless formation. Assassin roared and quickly retreated. As soon as he finished speaking, the air in the surrounding space became very heavy, and a terrifying energy filled the air. Zhuowen's face turned ugly. He quickly retreated, but assassin was like a maggot in his bones, tightly entangling Zhuowen. "You're courting death." Zhuowen was enraged. He used the profound meaning, heaven and earth perishing, and used both hands to perform the tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique. He suddenly blasted out, and a destructive energy shot out from his hands. Assassin's eyes narrowed. He was forced to retreat again and again, coughing up blood. His injuries were getting more and more serious, and his heart sank. He knew that he had underestimated Zhuowen's strength. Now, he was completely in a passive position. He knew that he would be defeated in less than 100 rounds. Fortunately, he was cautious by nature and had brought the blood-splashing limitless formation. If he had come alone, he would have died without a doubt. Puchi! Zhuowen punched out, twisting and breaking Assassin's arms. His fist energy then slammed into Assassin's chest. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.